mind doesn't exist outside reality. In your mind, you can have God exist, don't exist at the same time. In your mind, you can have a God, have a power and not power at the same time. In your mind, you can have God who is the creator and not the creator at the same time. Okay, is God the creator?
Yes.
Okay, so he has attribute of creation.
He has the attribute of creation, yes.
So he has attribute.
So he does have attribute.
No, but the attribute is not part of him. What I'm saying is attributes are something that he created.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That's what Mu'tazila is. So before he created the attributes, therefore he was without the attribute of creation. See, so therefore he was not the creator.
If you're not a creator before you create something, so before he created, he was not the creator. In order to,
Did he have the ability to make it clear to you? Did he have the ability to make it clear?
When we say that you have the attribute of creativity,
Yeah.
right? So what we mean by that is that you you're in the subset of a group in which there are those who are less creative and there are those who are more creative. Now, if we want to say that God had the attribute of being creative, right, before, well, that would mean that there was at least one other who was not creative. That is against monotheism.
Wait.
To say that there was someone less creative.
Wait.
To say he was creative implies that there's something less creative.
Wait. Describe God.
I can't describe God.
You see, you know why? No, he knows God. The God that he believes in doesn't exist outside reality, only in his mind. Okay, now, okay, is God a human being?
No.
So you're describing him now, he's not a human being.
That's a negative description. I can negatively describe him.
That's what I'm saying. So he only give the negative.
Yes.
Okay, so now, is God the ever living, has no beginning, no end?
He has no beginning, he has no end.
So he has a life.
What do you mean life?
Okay, wait. Is he living?
He is the living God.
Living, but okay. Is it all the time living?
Yes.
Is that an attribute?
That's an attribute. No. That's an attribute.
Wait. You know what his attribute is? You know, there's nothing exists. No.
When you say life, you're talking living. You're talking about existence.
No.
Because existence is not a prerequisite.
No. Human body exists, but the body is dead. So life is attribute in extra existence. We have human body exists. But the human body can exist and be dead at the same time. So a life is an extra attribute than existence.
You're telling me that. So according to you, what you're saying is that prior to having created anything, God had attributes.
Yeah, because why?
And that means that there was God and there was also attributes.
No. We don't say. Look, you see what he's doing. This Mu'tazilite, yeah? That's why you like. Yeah, no. I'm not saying that because we don't believe Allah's attributes is other than Allah. When we say who is Allah, let me say, when we say who is Allah, we say, brother, if you allow me to speak, because you keep speaking. When we say who is Allah, Allah is Al-Hayyu, Al-Qayyum, Al-Alim. That doesn't mean three God. If I say I have a tree at home, tall tree, fig tree, how many trees I have? According to his logic, I have three now. Because I have a fig and tall tree.
So that's the reason we reject the Trinity. That's the reason we reject the Trinity.
No.
But according to you,
Trinity, Trinity, not Trinity. They believe Jesus.
Because you see the tree, you say, there's only one tree there.
Okay. Josh. As a Jew man, do you believe the same God as a Christian?
No.
Thank you very much. But the Christians, they jump us crazy that they believe the same God. Yeah. Anyway. No, Josh.
One God like this one tree.
No, Josh. You're not listening to me now. No. Now I have a tree. It's tall tree and it's a fig tree. How many trees I have?
You have one tree.
But I just give three attributes to a tree. And you still said it's one.
Attributes as well. You have a tree and you have attributes of the tree.
But the attribute tree is not separate from the tree.
It's part of the tree.
It's part of the tree.
Oh, so it's part of the tree.
Yes.
So
no, wait. So thickness of the tree and tallness of the tree is not part of the tree. It's outside the tree.
So you're telling me it's part of the tree?
Yeah, that's what it made tree.
So you're telling me the attributes are part of God?
Yeah, it's part of God, yeah. That one makes God. That is God.
That's Christianity.
No, that's not Christianity. No, that's not Christianity.
That's part of God.
No, they don't say that. No. They say the Son is not the Father. And the Holy Spirit is not the Son. Don't lie. And there's the Christians. They don't say that.
Okay,
wait. Because everyone has to understand. Now, describe the Most High to us.
I can't describe him as
Okay, so
negative.
okay, so did God speak to Moses?
He spoke to Moses.
Is an attribute?
No.
Is the speech of God's essence, or other than his essence?
The speech is identical to him.
So his essence.
Speech is his essence.
So no, it's not his
His
essence.
identical.
Speech is not his. So the speech, okay, is the speech?
God and God's speech are no different from each other.
Okay, is the speech and the hearing the same thing?
They're the same thing. They're identical.
That's why you know what he's doing? He's demonstrating to us on the camera, him and the Mu'tazilite and the Ash'ariyite, they believe the same thing. Why they say that? They say because if you describe Allah with attributes according to their logic, which is corrupted logic, which is the Greek logic, you are mentioning many gods. So if we say Allah is ever living, the Most High, so what they say, the Mu'tazilites, they say when you say Allah is ever living, this Allah. When you say Allah is all hearing, it's Allah, meaning all hearing and all seeing is the same thing. No, anyone knows, and when we speak any language that we utilize, if I say I've heard you and I've seen you, seeing and hearing is completely different thing. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that correct? Yeah. He just say yes. So when God hears,
seeing and hearing are different things.
so when God hears and sees, is a different thing, attribute or same attribute?
They're not attributes. They are the activities of God.
No. Okay, that's yeah. There's attributes and there's an action. Okay, there's the essence, an attribute, action. God is the strongest. From his action that he will destroy. Listen, from his action that he will destroy people. You know, understand that. So what I'm gonna say to you, what I'm saying to you, clearly you are demonstrating to us the God that you believe in, it does not exist in reality. Okay, is God living or is he dead?
God is not dead.
Is he living?
Yes.
So he has attribute of living.
No.
Anyway, let me move. No, ikhwa. Let me move to something else. You remember last week, because clearly you're not making no sense anyway. Clearly last week you said about abrogation. Do you remember we spoke about abrogation?
I didn't speak about abrogation. I haven't spoken about abrogation.
Yes. What do you think about abrogation? Is it in the Bible, abrogation?
No.
Okay. Did God say to Abraham to kill his son Isaac?
No.
Watch this, ikhwa. You know what Allah said in the Quran? Wallahi, when I read it, Allah, you know when ikhwa. Wallahi, you know, ikhwa, watch this. Clearly the title of chapter, God telling Abraham to kill Isaac. You guys get it. No Quran, isn't it the Bible?
It doesn't say kill.
Watch this. Watch this, ikhwa. I will show you right now because I checked it. You know why they have to reject that? Because their objective goal is not to reject abrogation. Their objective goal to reject whatever the Prophet Muhammad came with. And these the attributes. Listen, I advise you to not follow the footsteps of Huyay ibn Akhtab. Follow the footsteps of the Rabi Abdullah ibn Salam who became Muslim. Now let us see. Did God tell Abraham to kill his son Isaac or not? Watch this, ikhwa.
Chapter 22.
Yeah, what is it? Genesis. Verse 22. 1, yeah?
Verse 2.
No, start from 1, of course. Yeah. So the first one you're gonna get here says Abraham. James, he said, God tell Abraham to kill his son. Watch this, eh? Sometime later, God tells Abraham. He said to Abraham, here I am. He replied. Then God said to take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him. Do what?
Sacrifice him.
Doesn't say that in Hebrew.
No, you know what? We have demonstrated last week that we cannot trust you. You know, because why? All the translations says sacrifice him. And it is well known. Watch this.
I implore you, everyone, to look up the meaning of the word v'ha'alehu and find out what the word olam means.
Wait.
If you translate these two words, you have refuted Shamsi's argument right.
You can't refute me because why? I mean, not saying you cannot refute me, like I'm infallible. But the point here is, like I told him, look, logically speaking now, brothers and sisters, yeah? Imagine we are in the park. Someone came to me. He said, Shamsi, there's people fighting outside. Another person comes. He said, Shamsi, there's people fighting outside. Another person, 20 people came, they don't know each other, and they said same thing. Logic dictates they must say the truth. Because they don't know each other, they're not going to agree upon a lie without meeting each other. Now when you look to all the translators, and some of them did translate it directly from the Hebrew, you know, and they mentioned sacrifice. And they mentioned sacrifice clearly. Now, so this is the last thing. He said, God said, take your son, your only son, who you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him. So which translation is this? This Bible Gateway? NIV. Let us choose another one. Okay? I'm looking for the other translations. The NIV, let's go to the other translation because maybe NIV say they're not translating the correct.
I'll translate it. And he said, take now your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go for yourself to the land of Moriah, and offer him up there as an elevation offering on one of the mountains that I shall say to
sacrifice.
Offer him up. Offer him up.
It's the same thing. The Christian guy, the first. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. You know what Allah said? You know Allah said? Listen. Ikhwa, you know Allah said? It's what Qasas. Listen to this, yeah? Allah said about them, when the Prophet Muhammad came to Jewish, not all of them, some of them, they said, bring miracles like Moses. Allah said, أَوَلَمْ يَكْفُرُوا بِمَا أُوتِيَ مُوسَى مِنْ قَبْلِ. They did not disbelieve what Moses came with before. Why they said that? After, you know what they said? They said, oh Muhammad, Moses never exists anyway. Just to reject Prophet Muhammad sallallahu they had to reject their own Torah. And what he did is demonstrating now. Wallahi. Look after yourself, Josh. I'm just showing.
Chapter 4.
Yeah, it's so clear.
That's not what it says in chapter 4.
What does it say?
Chapter 4.
After that one. Read the next verse that says.
I'm sorry for raising my voice. You know.
Abraham got up early in the morning.
Go to which one I was reading it? Go to King James.
And Isaac his son, and he split the woods of the elevation offering, and he took
Offering of what? Offering as what?
Elevation offering. And he went to the place that God said to him.
Continue, don't stop.
On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and he saw the place from afar.
They manifest, you know. They
Abraham
manifest.
said to his lads, return now here with stay here now
No,
for
they're
yourselves
معروف أخي. They're known to
with
reject.
donkey, and
Just for the sake of
the
rejecting Prophet
lad.
Muhammad
Let us go
They have it.
here.
Abdullah ibn Salam would testify against him. And he demonstrated
and let us return to you.
Keep reading and tell him the Lord.
And Abraham took the woods of the elevation offering, and he placed upon Isaac his son, and he took with his hand the fire and the knife, and
the knife, for why the knife? Is he going to tickle him with a knife?
What's the knife for?
Is he going to tickle him to offer him?
It's to sacrifice.
Yes, Abraham thought that offering up as an offering will mean that I need to slaughter him.
Yeah, so you understood better than Abraham. You understand God better than Abraham.
No, God understands it better.
No, it was a test because why? God tested it. Here clearly says.
Yeah, it says in verse 1.
It's a test. Okay. How God's going to test him? He's going to test him. That's it. So God is going to test him. We believe it was Ishmael, by the way. But for the sake of argument, I'm showing as Ibn Hazm al-Dahiri, may Allah have mercy upon him, from Andalusia, he was showing them from their own book. There is abrogation. Why? Because God gave a law of go sacrifice or offer your son. Then he abrogated that with giving him a sheep. You understand? That is clear. So listen, what I was advise you with, be the follower of Abdullah ibn Salam. Do you know what's Abdullah ibn Salam? Abdullah ibn Salam.
You guys made up and said he was a Jew who became
No, he was a rabbi. He was a rabbi. Of course, he's a made up. You just look, you made it up here. He was a rabbi from the Israelites who believed in the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. You know? So clearly, alhamdulillah, today I came back demonstrating from every way, from logical ways, that you people, you know the truth, but you don't want to follow it.
Quran doesn't say about Ismail.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't say Ishmael.
Quran talk about Isaac.
No, it doesn't say Isaac. No, it doesn't say Isaac. Yeah, it doesn't say name. Yeah, it doesn't say
Quran
name.
talk about
No. He's right.
does not
doesn't talk.
say about Ismail.
But you know what? I want to get Aaron, because Aaron, he was, when I told him about sacrifice, Aaron, yeah, he was no, there's no sacrifice. But when I read the Quran, wallahi, my brothers and sisters, read the Quran. Wallahi, when you speak to some people, especially the Jewish, not all of them, because Allah praised some of them and refutes some of them. They can demonstrate and manifest the verse in the Quran with their actions.
So just like he is.
He rejected it.
So too he will be given offense.
Okay, let me ask you something else. You know, Adam,
Adam.
Adam and Hawa and Eve.
Yes. Adam and Khair.
Yeah, you believe all the children of Adam came from Adam, correct?
Yes.
Okay, how we came about?
What do you mean?
How we came about? How?
As in, how did Adam and Eve
Then,
had children,
yeah.
and then they together had children?
No, before they had children, let's have children. They had to get married.
Cain married his sister.
His sister.
Seth married his sister.
Okay, watch this now. Are you allowed to marry your sister now?
Now
No,
we're not
not
allowed
now.
to.
Okay, so therefore it's abrogation.
No, it's not obligation.
No.
Okay, was it allowed to marry your sister according to Adam's law?
To Adam's law?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, according to Mosaic law, are you allowed to marry your sister?
No.
So the law that God legislated, He removed it and He gave you another law.
No, it's a law to different people, two different dinners.
That's what I'm saying. But it's
There's
still
a din to this and a din to that.
I understand that, but it's still abrogation.
It's not obligation.
Okay. You know what is abrogation? You know what abrogation means?
Obligation is where you change what was done before.
Okay. What was the law before?
It wasn't the law before, it was a law to those people.
Okay. Was it after or before?
It was before. It was a law. It was a law for those people.
So it was
If those-
obligated.
No, if those people still live today, it would be allowed. For them.
No. What I'm saying, abrogation still occur because Jewish people, what they did for the sake of rejecting Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said there's not all of them because the Ananites, which is Adnan, they do believe in abrogation, but they say Prophet Muhammad was a true prophet. However, he never abrogated the Mosaic law. Do you believe that Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet?
No.
You don't believe Prophet is a true prophet? Okay. Because what group are you? What
He
sect?
did abrogate Mosaic law.
Orthodox.
Yeah, but what is the name? It's just Orthodox. All of you claim to be Orthodox.
Yeah, we're all Orthodox.
Are you Jacobite?
Oh, you want a sect within Orthodox?
No, yeah. Where are
Oh,
you?
fine. I'm a Yekka. You've never heard of it.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay. So let me ask you now before we conclude. Yeah. You know, you believe God is the most wise.
Yes.
Okay.
That means that he's...
No. Forget. I'm not going there. No, I'm not going there. So, do you think the most wise will leave someone going around the earth claiming to be prophets of his while allowing him to overpower his beloved ones, the Israelites, as they claim, as the Christians? And he's not just saying, I'm a king. No, he said, I'm a prophet of the Most High. And he told me, you Israelite and the Christians, there is no salvation except by following me. And God aided him. And we know, yes, God sometimes allows evil liars as a test. However, eventually will expose them and humiliate them. But historically speaking, Prophet Muhammad and his companions and his followers were known to have the upper hand over the Israelites all the times. So do you think the most wise God would do that?
Yes.
Or he would expose the liar?
I think that he did do that, and it's very clear that he did that, and that eventually this lie will be
Exposed.
will be exposed when the coming of the Messiah.
Oh, so until the coming of the Messiah, it will be
Yes.
exposed.
Yes.
Or they exposed him before that?
No, not before that.
Okay, if someone going around claiming you are his king and he's raping children, would you expose him?
Sure, I would.
Are you more wiser than God?
No.
So therefore, how the most wise
Because God is
creator?
testing us.
Yeah, of course, but God will not give an everlasting test. When God always tests us, but afterwards the people of truth will have the upper hand.
Look, at the end of the day, it's not a very difficult test. Very few Jews in history have willingly converted to Islam.
Willingly?
Very few. Yes, willingly.
No, there's many of them. You can't say few.
Very few.
No, you know what? You cannot take. We just have demonstrated. We cannot take your statement. You just
Sure,
try
you-
to reject
sure, you
sacrifice
just ended.
and which is in the Bible.
Didn't say
Anyway, look after yourself. It was nice talking to you. I want to talk to Aaron because Aaron was there is no abrogation at all. You know. Look after yourself, yeah.
Yeah,
And, accept Islam before it's too late.
Except
Wallahi.
Baha'itism before it's too
Well,
late.
like before it's too late, man. Look, man, he came from a Jewish family and he's a Muslim, alhamdulillah.
Very, very-
He's gonna have a heart attack. Ah. His father. He's a Jewish and he became Muslim.
And your mother's Jewish? What can I say?
Alhamdulillah. You know, alhamdulillah. Anyway. Yeah.
Not the truth.
Come to Jesus.
Anyway, sorry, is that you? Who's you?
Yeah, this man.
And the light.
1 second.
Come to him.
The light, which light? Traffic light?
Come to Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Life.
Let me ask you a question, okay? Uncle, wait. Do you believe the same God as him?
What?
Do you believe the same God as him?
Not this again.
Oh yeah, of course.
Do you believe the same God as him?
No.
We don't.
I don't
Well,
believe
you know the Christians, they drive us crazy.
I believe that God is a God Almighty.
Which
And
one?
he's
Which
the-
one?
he's
Jesus
the-
or the Father?
He's the God of Abraham,
Which
Isaac,
one? Which
and
one?
Jacob. He's the
Which
God
one,
of Abraham, Isaac,
the
and
Son, the
Jacob.
Holy, and a piece of toast.
Ask him which one? Which one is the God of Abraham?
Huh?
The Father of Jesus?
Jehovah God.
Is that the
Jehovah
Father or
God.
Jesus?
Huh?
Is that the Father or Jesus?
Jesus. Jesus.
So not the Father.
Jesus.
So we don't believe in Jesus.
What
so
do
I
you
don't
mean
believe
by?
in the same God as you?
What do you mean by? Why do you
worshipping
see
a
him
man.
separate?
You know what I've noticed, Asif, yeah? Alhamdulillah, he's speaking nice, everything. You know what I've noticed from the Christian missionaries here? He's a Jewish man, he's standing in front of you, yeah?
I know.
He believes in the Muslim.
I see.
He believes stoning the... Wait. He believes stoning the adultery. That is in your book. You believe that, yeah? Stoning the adultery. You believe killing the apostate. That is in your book. I never seen no Christian or Islam hater coming to a Jewish man and he say, do you believe in this? Do you believe that? But they come to us to test us about Islamic Sharia. So my question to Islam haters, why I don't see you going to the Jewish people testing them? Where is Bob? Tell him, ask him.
Very easy.
What?
Ask, you know why? Because they kiss your toes. That's where's the answer.
No, they don't.
That's what they do. Because they believe. Yeah,
Come on.
that's true. Yeah, you're right.
We'd still be
No,
in
no,
Europe.
no. This is
We would
it.
still be in
You know
Europe.
what? Let me make no.
don't.
Let me make it clear to you. What do I mean?
No,
Because
no.
without the Old Testament,
don't.
if they try to reject the Old Testament, they will have no proofs for Jesus' prophethood. But we as a Muslims, we are not in need of the Old Testament to prove Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet. Alayhi salatu. That's why they don't upset you. But do you understand my point here?
Oh, he's a
My point, is the Christians come to Muslim. Look at your barbaric, backward. You believe stoning the adultery. You believe killing the apostate. But you're always walking around here and you believe the same thing is in your book. But I never see the Islam haters and they're coming to you ask you the question. Why?
I'll tell you why.
Go on, tell me. I want to hear from you then.
Because they don't see it being practiced by any Jews today.
Yeah.
Because in Judaism, it only
Yeah.
applies in a case when there's the Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
There is no Sanhedrin, so it can't apply.
But you still believe in it though.
Yeah, we still believe it.
And it's still valid.
It's still valid.
That's what I'm saying. So
the
name what?
The reason they're doing it is because they see Muslim countries where that is the law today.
Which country
right.
name? Which country they do it?
That's right.
Arabia,
Not
No.
not only in
Wait.
the- in the-
Ask
Islamic
if 1
country,
minute. Ask
but
if.
also
Wait.
in the text.
Ask if 1
In the
minute.
text.
Wait.
In the text,
Wait.
we see all these things.
Wait.
We see all these things in your text.
So now, if I believe,
your text.
wait. So ask
So
if.
we don't condemn as a human. We condemn you as
because you believe in it.
what you believe on.
He believes the same thing.
What is
Condemn
your-
him. Believe it. He
No,
believes.
no.
He says
I
no.
don't see.
He
I don't
believes.
see-
Do I practice
I don't
it?
see him
Do I practice it?
practicing.
Do I practice it?
Huh?
Wait.
I-
Do I?
Practicing
Wait.
marrying a 6-year-old
Who's
girl.
6 years talking about? Who's
Did ever
Look,
Jews
he's changing.
marry
We're not talking about that.
6-year-old girl?
No.
But,
He doesn't
but
marry
the
no girl.
Muslim does. But
No.
the Muslim does
Brother,
because
brother.
Muhammad did.
See, he came in. It's not so.
Because Muhammad did.
Now watch this,
So,
yeah?
so Muhammad is a pedophile according to Quran.
He's a
And
liar, man. He's
according
disgusting.
to-
You don't prophet, my prophet,
according to
pedophile. You
According
must
to
stink.
hadith. So
You worship a cow, now you worship a man. You need to
this
stop worshiping
Bible
God.
does not
You know, I'm not
encourage
disrespect my prophet,
Jews.
that's what we deal
Yeah?
with. No, listen,
Neither it
stop
encourages-
kissing his toe. Stop kissing his toe.
This
Yes.
Bible
It's
does
a-
not encourage you to be a pedophile, isn't it?
It's a liar, it's a liar, look, he's a liar.
So
He's a
does the
liar.
Bible encourage us as a Christian not to be a pedophile? But Quran encourages Muslims to be a pedophile because Muhammad practiced to be a
You
pedophile.
finish. Is it okay to kill children in the Bible?
Depends on the
Is that the Is that the law or has it been abrogated?
depends on the situation.
Is it a law in the Old Testament?
That you have to kill children
Yes.
generally? No.
No, not generally. Is it a law in a war? You have to kill a man and kill children sometimes.
With the idolatry, yes.
It's a law.
With idolatry, yes.
Do you condemn that?
Idolatry.
Do you condemn that?
Idolatry.
No. Do you
What is this?
No. Do you condemn
What
killing
is he
children?
saying?
Do you condemn killing
He
children?
is saying
You see how
the
justified it is?
children.
Do you condemn?
Children.
Listen. Do you condemn killing children?
If he is
Look, front of me said yes. It's okay to kill children out adultery, and he doesn't say a word. to know,
Jesus ever
my
practice?
brothers and sisters and non-Muslims there.
Did
The
Jesus
Christians,
ever practice?
they kiss the toe of the Jewish people,
Marry
even
a
the Islam haters. I'm not talking about that.
Did Jesus ever
Wait,
practice marry a 6-year-old girl?
wait. You see, now look.
Did Jesus ever
Answer the
practice
question. Okay.
marrying a 6-year-old girl?
Okay. Is it okay to kill children? Is it
Tell
okay
me.
to kill
No,
children?
tell me.
Okay, can I move? Can we move? Because I want to speak to you.
Did
Come.
Jesus ever practice? Did Jesus ever practice?
Yeah, you God, practice that. You God,
Why Muhammad practiced
wait.
6-year-old girl?
Watch this, yeah? You God pretend to be a baby and you want inside of private part.
No, the Muslims are.
You God
Muslims
pretending to be a
are
baby and you want inside of private part. Come we talk, let's forget
Practice
it.
of Muhammad.
Because why? I don't like this. You like that one, yeah? Ah, you like that? Jewish man, they like that one. That's a clever one, isn't it? Yes, of course. Because he's talking about Prophet Muhammad getting married to Aisha. He's God pretend to be a baby inside woman's private part. And he talking about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do you understand my argument? My argument is that when you see Islam haters coming to me or coming to the brother Mansour or brother attacking the Muslims because we believe in the law, that of course the law that we believe in, there is conditions to it, does not implement in any country, and is rare when it can take place. You understand? But the point here is it's not about implementing it. The Islam haters come to us here because we just believe in it. They will call us a backward. Do you understand? It's not about even if you tell them, listen, I don't implement it, and we don't implement it in our country like Algeria. They say no. The fact that you believe in it, it's okay to kill a apostate. You are a backward and you are uncivilized, and you see a war against us. But you Jewish people believe in the same thing. Nothing is happening. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they have a different gripe with us. They just accuse us of killing their man god.
That's why you had to come to North Africa, Morocco, Algeria to save your life. You know that? The Catholic Church, when they were killing you. You see?
They kicked them out of Spain.
And now you're killing us in Palestine.
I'm killing you in Palestine?
No, you, Astaghfirullah. No, sorry, forgive me. Not you. But there's Ikhwa who's smoking
the
away.
mask just slipped 10 seconds ago.
No, sorry.
The mask has slipped, everybody.
No, I'm saying when you say you as a Jewish people, they're Zionists.
Yeah. So the Jewish people are the same thing.
No, it's not the same.
Oh, so why did you say that?
No. When I say you,
The
it means
mask
the same.
slips. The mask
No, it's not massive. What do you think about the Israeli state? Do you support
I
it?
think about it. I don't support it.
You against it, yeah?
I'm against it.
So you are like what do you call them? In the Hadri? There's a group that is against it.
There's lots of groups today.
Yeah, it's against it. Yeah. So when I say that anyway, it was so nice talking to you. But alhamdulillah, khalas, leave him. We was going to speak to him nicely.
I don't
Like, have some respect, man. Have some respect. Wallah, it's too much, man. I tried to speak to you nicely, but you start shouting. You try to mock us. Prophet Muhammad getting married to Aisha. You have your God become a baby and you went inside one private part. When he knew he was God, he knows what he's doing. Talking about my prophet. Anyway, listen, can you take the motor? Wait, before that, can someone help him take the engine from his throat? He has the engine in his throat, take it out. He's wow. He should become officer. Everyone hates him. So my brothers.
He can fill it.
Now
He can fill the park. He can fill the concert hall.
So my brothers and sisters, those who are watching, if Islam haters come to you, asking you to believe in Sharia, I say, wait. How come I don't see you going to Jewish people asking them the same question? Because they believe in it. To show you, it's not about the Sharia they have problem with. They have problem with the Muslims. They hate us. You understand? Anyway, inshallah, we look for someone else. Take care of this stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's enough long. You laugh. What are you laughing for?
Enough of me.
Enough of you. Where's Aaron? Let me look. Aaron. Where is Aaron?
No idea. I'm not here next week, Shamsi.
You're not here? Why, you're going on holiday?
No, it's a fast day next week. So
What do you mean fasting?
We have a fast day next Sunday, the 17th of Tammuz.
You fasting mean fast? You fast?
Yeah, next Sunday is a fast.
So how do you fast? How?
You don't eat, you don't drink.
Yeah, but how many hours?
From the beginning of the morning all the way till the night time.
Oh, okay. Night time what? Like 9 p.m. or when the sun sets?
Much later than that.
Ah, okay.
This time of year.
Where's the other one?
Sensible boss. Yeah, very The Bible is a perfect.
You're pushing. Stay back. You don't come in front of them. Stop pushing.
Hey. Excuse me. It's fine.
His old man is being rude.
Excuse me, please don't be rude to him.
I'm not being rude to him. He's pushing everyone.
Don't.
He's pushing.
All right. Do you have a problem with him coming here?
I have a problem with pushing me.
Okay.
No, I'm not pushing you.
James, brother James, come this way.
Don't tell lies. Don't tell lies.
Where's James?
Brother James, that's fine.
Okay,
Where's brother James? We need him.
So,
How many minutes?
the topic that we're going to talk about is the factors.
Have you started the time, yeah?
No.
Get started.
No, before starting.
Why should we before start? It's your time.
Before starting,
Okay, go on.
Discuss the topic. Introduction.
What?
so I am here to talk about the differences between Islamic slavery and slavery as recorded in scriptures. Theologically, the Bible rejects slavery,
Okay.
and therefore those who read the Bible
The Old,
could
the Old Testament and New Testament, yeah?
both
Okay.
reject slavery.
Okay,
and
that's going to
therefore
be quite easy then.
those who read the Bible
All right.
could
No problem.
very
I
strongly
understand the topic.
reject the Bible.
I understand the topic.
Reject slavery.
I understand the
In
topic.
contrast, in regards to Islam,
Right, can we get your time started then? Because we understand the topic.
what's the topic?
The topic is slavery, right? And the biblical/Quranic view of it, right?
Yeah.
Right, get started.
Quranic view.
If you have 4 minutes, get
Do
started.
you agree with Islamic slavery?
No, I'm happy with the topic, yes.
But do you agree?
No, give
answer.
him 4 minutes. No, don't ask me questions. You want to start? You got your 4
Do you-
minutes start.
do you-
No,
do you-
don't ask me questions.
No.
No,
The
no.
The
The topic is fine.
What is the topic?
The topic is slavery in the Bible and the Quran. Do
That's
you want?
not a topic. Proposition.
Yes, it is a
What is the
topic.
proposition?
That's what you said. I'm happy with
The
it.
proposition.
Are you happy with that?
The proposition.
Yeah.
Islam
Yeah.
continues to have slavery
Okay, no problem.
underpinning its
Fine.
theology.
Okay, I disagree with it. If you're talking about
Good.
human to human slavery, not God to human, right? Is that what you mean?
Human to human slavery. yeah.
Fine, no problem. I'm against that proposition.
Okay, good. So
Right,
that's what we're talking about.
And also we're talking about the Bible, right?
Yeah. You
No problem. 4 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Do you want to go first?
No, you go first, sir.
You want to start now?
No, one second.
4 minutes, okay. 4 minutes right now.
Can you buy me a No, wait.
Brother, you buy
all right.
yourself.
gonna look away. Look at
Okay, let's
start now, yeah?
Listen, let's focus on the big topics and then we'll talk about these things later.
all right.
Go ahead.
4 minutes now.
Go ahead.
Okay, Islam approves of Islamic slavery, and therefore, even until today, there is no theological basis to reject slavery according to Islam. Why does Islam propagate slavery? Point number one, Muhammad himself and the wider religion has a derogatory view on a few different people groups. Number one, black people. Number two, unbelievers. And especially women. A very derogatory view. And this resulted in harsh dealing by people, including Muhammad himself, of slaves. Harsh punishments, harsh dealing with slaves. Slaves were tortured, sex torture for female slaves. Slaves had no rights, and slaves had perpetual slavery, no legal rights, no civil rights. They were treated as merchandise and so on. According to Islam, there was no intention to manumit, i.e. to abolish slavery. Muhammad himself allowed Islamic slavery to be propagated until perpetuity. So Islam is a very bad model for today, because according to Islam, Islamic slavery is still a valid
model to be practiced and will be practiced even till the end of times. In contrast, when we come to the Bible considers every human being to be similar. When we compare the Bible, Jesus Christ, with Muhammad, we see someone who is well fitting into the 21st century model, where we hate racism, where we hate slavery. So Jesus Christ is the only person that needs to be followed in terms of our modern views of slavery, abolishing of slavery, and our modern views on the fact of human beings being similar. Muhammad is not a good example for people of today, and therefore Muhammad ought to be rejected. So in particular, I'd like to ask the question to Muhammad, who is here. Muhammad, the so-called Islamic prophet, approves of having sex with captive women at will by Muslims. Do you think that's a very good model for today to practice? When Muslims go to capture non-Muslims, do you think Muslims should have the ability and the permission from Muhammad and the Islamic Allah to have sex with captive women at all times, anytime they want to? And do you agree with that principle? Do you think that upholds human values properly?
30 seconds.
Okay, go on.
You got 30 seconds.
Got 30 seconds.
No, that's
He's very
fine, go on.
confident. He's very confident.
Thank you for joining the Sunday sparring sessions with subpar opponents like this man here, who clearly is not articulate enough and hasn't used enough evidences from the Quran or Sunnah. In fact, if I recall, he hasn't used any evidence at all. He had papers in his hand, but he didn't even quote a single verse from the Quran or a single hadith. Unfortunately today, what I will be doing is the opposite of that without the papers in my hand. So the Quran states something which refutes almost everything he states, which is in chapter 90 of the Quran, where it says, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ. What would make you know what the good way is? Freeing slaves is the good way. So the idea that the manumission of slaves or the emancipatory discourse was that which is not mentioned in the Quran, but in fact the opposite of is mentioned, is something directly refuted in the Quranic discourse. Now this verse, وَمَا أَدَرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةِ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ, is not an abrogated verse. And I would like to know how my friend here has an answer for this verse. But not only this, we find in the Quran, in chapter 9, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he mentions the categories of zakat, which is, as you know, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. There are 5 pillars of Islam. I can teach you the basics in some other time. One of them is zakat, the charity. And so one of the categories of charity is wafir riqab, and freeing slaves. So here you have 2 things. You have an emancipatory discourse in chapter 90, Surah Al-Balad, and then you have the Quran saying one of the obligations, which is zakat, you have to spend the money to emancipate slaves. And then we have all of these ahadith of the Prophet Muhammad telling us of the virtue of freeing slaves. Now, this already has refuted almost everything that he has said. Let's move to the Bible now for a nice discussion about Numbers chapter number 31, verse number 18, which of course is going to be a difficult verse for my honorable friend, and of course I use the term loosely here, to explain where Moses is told to go into the town, and he is take the young girls for yourself. Now what young girls is he talking about here? When you look at the Babylonian Talmud, which is actually exegetes this particular verse, it's talking about prepubescent girls. So Moses is being instructed to take prepubescent girls for yourself as captives. Now the idea is this: I want to know of a single verse of the Quran or a single hadith where prepubescent girls are told to be taken as captives in this manner. In fact, not only this, but if they believe that Jesus is God, because he is part of the Trinity, and therefore he's actually the author of the Old Testament as well, isn't he? Because he's God and he's inseparable from the rest of the Trinity, right? So of course, you have a double problem here. Jesus Christ, therefore, is the one that is commanding Moses to go and take captives, which are girls, for himself in chapter 31 verse 18 of Numbers. So this refutes the secondary claim that he had, that Jesus was completely disassociated from these slaves. So you have two things here. You have a complete refutation of the fact that there's not an emancipatory discourse in the Quran, which there is, and then you have a charge which I'm putting forward to this subpar opponent who will have no tools of being able to answer this question, that number one was Moses being commanded to take slaves, but also that Jesus commanded this as well.
Your turn. All right. So Muhammad here calls me subpar, but both the points he raised are really subpar. Let's look at both of them carefully. What happened in the book of Numbers? Read the verse carefully. The context corresponds to Moabites. You might have heard about a person called Balaam, acting on behalf of the Moabites, leading the nation of Israel to sexual immorality, and thereby allowing Balaam to be able to curse the nation of Israel. That's the historical context. People who were involved in sexual immorality. With that as the backdrop, what Moses said, Muhammad, is that you need to read the verse carefully. It wasn't talking about pre-puberty. Nothing about adolescence or puberty is discussed. If you read the verse carefully, all that it would talk about is girls or ladies who did not have intimacy with men. What was he talking about? What he was talking about was those who did not lead you to sexual immorality. Those kinds of girls, I challenge Muhammad, why did you mention puberty? You need to show me that from the Bible. While the Bible talks about intimacy, number one. Number two, the Bible show to me where these ladies were taken as captives. Read the Bible carefully. What you would find is that everyone else were wiped out, whereas these were allowed to live along with the nation of Israel. That is what you would find. So find one example from the Bible. From the Bible, anywhere, old, new, anywhere you want to go to, Muhammad, and find at the end of the war where women are taken as captive to be held as slaves. Find one example and then let's talk about facts. The problem is this: Muhammad is a Muslim, and therefore clearly he is going to have his issues with his eyes. The problem anywhere, everywhere, whatever he reads, he is going to read Islam into it. Why do I say he is reading Islam into biblical verses? Nowhere in the Bible you would see these women being taken as captives and made slaves to the people. You don't find that in the Bible, yet he reads that. And the reason for that is Muhammad allowed slavery to continue until the end of his life. Sahih al-Bukhari, you say slaves were manumitted, and that's one of the 5 pillars. Sahih al-Bukhari disagrees with you. Chapter 3, verse saying 765. 765. Sahih al-Bukhari 3, 765. Narrated Turin, the free slave of Ibn Abbas, that Maimuna bin al-Harith told him that she manumitted a slave girl without taking the permission of the Prophet. A person comes to Muhammad and she says, I have manumitted a slave. The great Islamic Allah, who he thinks allowed Islamic Prophet to manumit slaves, do you know what he says? He says, why did you do it? Why did you let her go? Whereas the Bible dislikes the idea of people being taken as captive slaves, women especially. Muhammad here goes on to say, you would have got more reward if you had given her to one of your maternal uncles. So the idea that the so-called prophet called Muhammad implemented manumission of slaves is a fantasy idea, doesn't correspond to reality. Let me ask you this, Muhammad.
Time's finished. All right. Well, thank you for that. Unfortunately, you haven't done a good job in answering my interrogation. Actually, the verse says, take the little ones for yourself. This is chapter 31, verse 18 of Numbers. Take them for yourself. And if you're saying this doesn't imply captivity, if you're saying this does not imply captivity, then you will be going against all halakhic understandings by the Jewish people who have been interpreting this for decades, in fact, actually millennia. And I will say to you once again, go back to the Jerusalem Talmud. There's two Talmuds, the Babylonian one and the Jerusalem one. Go and see what the rabbis have said in relation to this verse. They clearly understood it to mean captivity. Okay, you don't like this verse. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 2, where it talks about going the way of the Amalekites and don't leave anything alive, and even the donkey, women, children, and even the donkey. And other places it says kill everything. So actually, the injunctions in Numbers chapter 31, verse 18, are a step down, even though they mean captivity for women. They're a step down from what we find in 1 Samuel 15. Because in 1 Samuel 15, we see everybody's genocided and everybody's killed. And once again, we have to bring to the attention of the Christian community that you may say this is the Old Testament and it's something we don't want to associate with. But if you believe that Jesus is inseparable from the Trinity, then you believe that he was the author of the Old Testament, which means that at least at one point in time, he must have ordered Moses to do those genocides and kill those children and kill those animals. This is clear, and this is the understanding of the rabbis, and this is the understanding, quite frankly, of even reformers, theologians like John Calvin, who exegeted the Bible. Look at how people exegeted the Bible away from this pathetic apologism that you're finding here from these people. You'll find that it's a consistent theme, that they understood it in the way of genocide and captivity and slavery. In fact, racial slavery, which he had the audacity to accuse our Prophet of, despite the fact that he's the only man, and Islam is the only religion which categorically forbids racism. And I say that to you, get me one verse of the Bible which has the equivalent of saying racism is wrong. I can get you a hadith straight away. La fadla li Arabiyyin ala ajami. That there's no virtue over an Arab over a non-Arab, or a black man over a white man, and that the best of you are those most in virtue. Get me the equivalent of that in the Bible. We find the opposite in the Bible. Genesis chapter 9, verse number 22, we find the curse of Ham. Noah had 3 sons, and the biblical exegete said the curse of Ham was that he was cursed with black skin, curly hair, and slavery. And you see now, those who justify slavery in the transatlantic slave trade, obviously some use the Bible to I will be honest, to attack slavery as well. But for the majority of those who promulgated slavery, use this curse of Ham as a justification. You can't come to me and talk about slavery. You can't come to me and talk about racism. Because the Bible, there is nothing in the Bible that forbids racism. We have Jesus Christ. Is it time?
20 seconds.
20 seconds. We have Jesus Christ in the New Testament.
Up,
we have Jesus Christ shunning the Gentile woman and calling her of the dogs. This is racism, with all due respect. She's a dog because she's not a Jew. So here we find, my challenge is very clear. One verse of the Bible which categorically rejects slavery, and how do you deal with those verses that I told you in chapter 19 and chapter 9? Yeah.
Muhammad Hijab should get to know the topic first clearly. If you're going to talk about genocide as the Bible advocate, we can get to that later. The point is pretty simple, Muhammad. If you were to listen here, the point is pretty simple. The entire narration of the nation of Israel was about God redeeming a people group who were slaves, oppressed slaves. Redeeming them and giving them liberty is the entire Old Testament, the beginning of the Old Testament. And Exodus chapter 22, verse 21, soon after God brings them out, this is what he says: not to mistreat a stranger or oppress him, because because you were strangers in Egypt. The challenge that I had for you is very simple, Muhammad. Find one evidence. Read to me one evidence where you find people who are brought under captivity and made slaves to live with Israel, to be slaves with Israel. You won't be able to find. In contrast, what you will find is that in the Bible, you find God advocate similar law for foreigners and for the nation of Israel. God forbidding kidnapping, i.e. taking a person against his will, whether it against his will and bringing him under captivity. You find people given rights, legal rights given to those who are working in Egypt. Exodus 22:21, not to mistreat a stranger or oppress him. No unfair treatment, no forced marriage. Jesus says there is neither, New Testament says, Galatians 3:28, there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. Excuse me, one second. There is neither male nor female. So if you go through the Bible, the entire story about the Bible is redemption of slaves and people being made to live as free human beings, only with obligation under God. In contrast, what do you find? In contrast, you find Muhammad. Excuse me. In contrast, you find Muhammad having deep racism. Muhammad thinking two black people are equal to one Arab slave. Sahih Muslim 10:3901. Sahih al-Bukhari 9:89-256. That black people were raised in heads. Muhammad himself owned black slaves. Sahih Muslim 10:3901. 52334. Al-Tabari talking about black slavery, explaining it as the Africans having come from Ham and therefore ought to be enslaved. Tirmidhi Hadith 38, Muhammad says, when Allah created Adam, he stroked his right shoulder and took out a black race as if they were coals. Then he said to those who were on this right side toward paradise, and I don't care. He said to those who were on his left shoulder towards hell, and I don't care. What you find here is Muhammad saying all black people are destined to go to hell, and he doesn't even care about this. Not just this, Muhammad also considered anyone who is not a Muslim to be like cattle, like pigs, like sheep, cows, camels, and therefore no wonder you find in Islam very evil treatment of unbelievers, non-Muslims, when they are caught during a war. What happens to them? They are taken, females are taken as sex slaves. Quran, Surah 4, Ayah 3. Surah 4, Ayah 24.
Time finish. We'll get to 4:3 in the next.
Oh, you want to know his mic.
All right. So
Is he with you? Could you please ask him not to disturb in the middle of
no one's no one's with me here today. Everyone's coming from their own homes. Ready? All right. So he wanted something on the Bible. I gave him Deuteronomy. I gave him. You can go to Deuteronomy as well, chapter 21. That's something that. Or you can also go to Numbers 31:18, and you can go to 1 Samuel's. And the reason why I was mentioning genocide was because if the Bible, the biblical commandment, was to kill the people, enslaving them is one notch below that. So it doesn't make sense to talk about morality when you're talking about going into an entire village of Amalekites and destroying and killing the entire population, not leaving even the animals to be alive. There is no such injunction that you will find anywhere in the Quran, and I once again challenge you to find me a single verse or a single hadith to that effect. Now, pardon?
21.
Yeah, no, it's not 21. Get it? Yeah, so now let's quickly talk about what he talked about. The hadiths that he mentioned were false. That the black people on the right and the left. This is not, the word used in that hadith was not black. The word was dark. And this is in the Quran, وُجُوهُهُمْ مُسْوَدَّةٌ, that they will have darkened faces. And in fact, ironically, this kind of language is used when men practice something called infanticide. When they kill daughters that are girls, that their faces will be darkened and so on, and there's a reprimand in the Quran for that. It doesn't mean that it's talking about the race. and he talks about two black people being the thing for one. How is that the case? When Bilal ibn Rabah was bought by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq for a high price, very, very high price, and then when he was told afterwards, he said, I would have paid even more for him. So this is nonsense what you're talking about. Bilal ibn Rabah, which everyone knows who he is, married Hala bint Auf, who was an Arab, and he became the mu'adhin of the higher echelons of that particular Islamic society. There was no mention of his race in the derogatory way whatsoever. In fact, we have a narration where Bilal was actually abused by Abu Dharr al-Ghifari because he said to him that you're the son of a black woman. The Prophet got angry and he responded by saying, what have you said, and reprimanded him and told him not to say such a thing. So all of what you're doing is distorting and completely decontextualizing that which is correct. You haven't actually had any response for that which I've mentioned, which is that Jesus Christ, who is meant to be inseparable from the body of the Trinity, he is inseparable from the Trinity. He is the one who commanded to genocide and to enslave. You'll find in Numbers 31:18, you'll find in Deuteronomy chapter 21:10, you'll find in First Samuel chapter 15 verse 2, and this, look, you find here, whoever strikes his male or female servant, this is Exodus chapter 21 verse 20, whoever strikes his male or female servant with a staff, and if they have died by his hands, he shall be guilty of a crime, but if he survives for 1 day or 2, he shall not be subject to punishment, because it is his money. You see, if he beats him so badly, that he doesn't survive, he doesn't get any crime because it is his money. This is the heart of objectification, of commodification, of all the things that you're accusing Islam of. You have no answer, my friend, to the emancipatory discourse that we find in Surah Al-Balad chapter number 90, and the fact that freeing slaves was something which is in the zakat obligatory. Also, you'll find in chapter number 24 verse 33 that it's mentioned mukataba. And mukataba is the idea of somebody comes who is enslaved, and according to one opinion, according to Tafsir al-Qurtubi, that they have to be freed. If they say we don't want to, we want to ransom ourselves, they're enslaved. So in other words, the so-called master, you have to be freed. So that's another thing you can bring.
Time.
Go ahead.
All right, Muhammad is repeating his same erroneous points again. Who is Muhammad Hijab? Let's ask that simple question. His own scholar, Islamic scholar, says Muhammad Hijab is an infidel. Why do I say this? Because his own Islamic scholar, Sheikh Saleh Al-Fawzan, says slavery is part of Islam. Slavery is part of Islam. Slavery is part of jihad, and jihad will remain as long as there is Islam. So slavery is part of Islam, slavery is part of jihad, and jihad will remain as long as there is Islam. And he goes on to say, they are ignorant people like Muhammad Hijab here who think slavery, Islamic slavery has been abolished, are ignorant. They are not scholars. He said of people who express such opinions, they are merely writers. Whoever says such things is an infidel. Why does Muhammad Hijab say what he says at Hyde Park? Because he knows he can't say what this gentleman said from Saudi Arabia in a nation like ours. He knows it. If he says what he says from Saudi Arabia, he knows Islam would not spread even the tiny little bit it is attempting to do now. And that is why he doesn't do it. And that is why the Saudi Arabian Sheikh calls him an infidel. What do we find? He said Bilal was a black guy and treated with great respect. Bilal said to Abu Bakr, my dear friend Sahih al-Bukhari says, 557.99, it says, Bilal, even up to the time of Abu Bakr, remained a slave. And that is very important for you to know. I don't care what he did. I don't care if he called people to pray. I don't care if he sang a few songs or any of those things. The question is, how did Muhammad treat him? Muhammad treated Bilal as a slave. So continued Abu Bakr. Muhammad was quite happy with this. he was quite happy with slaves, continuing as slaves until the end of Islam, which is the end of times according to Islam, according to Muhammad, hijab and any other knowledgeable Muslim. So the problem is this. In Islam, blacks, unbelievers, especially women, are treated in a bad way. They are seen as cattle, pigs, all sorts of derogatory terms. This resulted in harsh treatments of sex torture. Female slaves were tortured. Quran Surah 4:24, Quran Surah 4 verse 3, Surah 4 ayah 29 and so on. Please answer, Muhammad, if the Quran says that Muslims can take any of the captive women who their right hands possess and have sex with them at any stage, any stage. Do you agree with this? If you had a wife who is a non-Muslim, and if Muslims were to get hold of her and say, she is my captive, I can do what I want to do with her, will you be happy? I'm assuming you won't be. And therefore, you need to agree, Islam does terrible things with slaves. Like I said earlier, Bilal, manumission, a great one of 5 pillars according to Muhammad. The problem, like I said earlier, Surah Sahih al-Bukhari 3:765, Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57-99, both of them are against this. Slaves were asked to continue as slaves.
Right, let's do one more each, yeah? We don't want to spend like another 2 hours. I think it's settled after all. I'm gonna say this again. I have one, then you have one, and then I finish because you started. Okay?
Yes. So so
Me,
yours. Yeah.
I'm gonna speak, then you, then I conclude, and then that's it. Yeah?
Okay.
Alright. Was that 2 rounds?
No, one more. Yeah,
So 424 والمحصنات من النساء إلا ما ملكت أيمانكم. Where does it say you can have sex with slaves at any time and all this stuff that you're talking about? It doesn't say that at all. All it says is that you're not allowed to marry a woman who's married except what your right hand possesses. What your right hand possesses doesn't mean that you can have sex with them whenever you want. In fact, the idea of raping a woman, whether she is a slave or whether she's a wife, has been spoken about by the Salaf of this Ummah or the predecessors. Shafi'i mentions it in Kitab al-Umm. Even Imam Malik mentions it, and the punishment of it is a corporal punishment, something like whipping and so on and so forth. This is that Islam endorses at all, and the evidence of that is the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad where he says, "La darar wa la dirar." You can't harm or reciprocate harm. How can you rape a woman, whoever she may be, in Islam without causing harm? So this is something that is completely falsehood, and it is a projection that he has of his own religion onto mine. Because the truth of the matter is, what we've said today is, number one, you have the verse in Numbers 31:18. We have Deuteronomy 21:10. We have Exodus that we've spoken about. We've spoken about, and there's other verses. There's so many of them that I can't even enumerate them in the short space that I have today. They have been understood by biblical commentators, both Jewish and Christian, aforetime, including those writers of the Jerusalem Talmud and others, as meaning captivity and genocide. And that's why sophisticated theologians of the 21st century and even the 20th century admit this candidly. They admit this candidly, and therefore they make some excuse to disband in the Old Testament, and they try and pretend as if it doesn't exist. The truth of the matter is, if you believe Jesus is God, then he is inseparable from the Old Testament authorship, which means he is the one who commanded Moses to do all of those things. If he is the God, he is the one who commanded the people to genocide. He is the one who commanded the people to enslave and so on and so forth. He is the one who said, he is your money when it comes to beating. Bilal did not remain a slave for all of Islam. This is a falsehood. In fact, that's impossible. He married Hala bint Auf, and he gave her a mahar, and she was a free woman, and he was a free man. This was absolutely established in the Sunnah, and he had children with her, and those children were in fact half white, half black, half Arab. Nobody ostracized him except that they would meet the reprimand of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as in the case of Abu Dharr al-Ghafari in the well-known hadith. So therefore, this notion that Islam is a racist religion is something you cannot substantiate. Moreover, it's something you will not be able to find in the Bible a single verse which has condemnatory tone or an explicit remark relating to racism being a bad thing. So what have we established today? Number one, the Quran has an emancipatory discourse, as mentioned in chapter 90, and as mentioned in Surah At-Tawbah, and as mentioned in chapter 24, verse 33. We have mentioned that there are opinions of the Salaf that say that a slave can literally force themselves out of slavery through ransom. It's called mukataba. فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. That give them mukataba, ransom if they know good, if you know good in them. And according to a Qurtubi, that some Salaf said this is by way of wujub, which means it's obligatory, even if the slave master didn't want it. Which is, if this opinion is respected, as good as abolition. This is as good as abolition. If this opinion is not respected, then it's not. He talked about Salah al-Fawzan, I'll mention that in the conclusion.
Yeah, start. Okay, all Muslims have a very important question to ask today. On the one hand, you have the Bible. A claim is made that Islam and the Bible, New Testament and the Old Testament are Abrahamic in origin. But what we find are clear differences. In the Bible, we don't talk about racism. We don't talk about abolishing of slavery in the way that he wants them to be spoken of, because the Bible never had slavery like what Islam ever had. What you find in the Bible is the story of God empathizing with slaves, the nation of Israel, redeeming them and leading them on to freedom. This is the story asked. And on the back of that, God of the Bible says, Exodus 22:21, he says, not to mistreat a stranger or oppress him, because you yourselves were strangers in Egypt. So across the Bible, what you find is God of the Bible demanding fair treatment of everyone, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, language spoken, and so on. And God is seen as God who is impartial in the Bible. And I asked Muhammad multiple times, can you show me a place where women were taken as sex captives? And he couldn't show that. All that he's talking about are a few places where there was political war and entire people groups were asked to be wiped out by God. Now God, my God, God of the Bible judges. If he has a problem with that, well, I can only say judgment is coming. And a few of these judgments came in the past, Amalekites and so on. Judgments came. In contrast, what do you find in Islam? In Islam, Islam clearly says that the black people are not worth as much as the Arabs. One Arab guy is worth two black guys. Black people are like raisin heads, unbelievers are like cattle, and so on. And this resulted in very harsh treatments. Sex torture of female slaves, you find in various portions of the Hadith and Quran 4:3, 4:24, Surah Al-Kubra 2:227, and so on. Multiple places you find sex torture of female slaves, Umar torturing female slaves. No rights being given. Quran, Surah 16, Ayah 75 says, slaves control nothing, no right whatsoever. And that free men cannot be punished for the murder of a slave. Quran, Surah 2, Ayah 178. Also repeated in Tafsir Jalalain. So the point is, torture of sex slaves, no rights. Free men are not equal to the slaves. So clearly no equal treatment. And this therefore resulted in Muhammad not permitting or not allowing manumission to happen. Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57-99, 3:765. You find Bilal continuing as a slave. If Bilal says this to Abu Bakr, if you have bought me for yourself, Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57-99. If you have bought me for yourself, then keep me for yourself. But if you have bought me for Allah's sake, then leave me for Allah's work. He is pleading. This great guy who is the one who calls people into pray for prayer, he is pleading, if you have bought me for the sake of Allah, leave me alone. But you have still keeping me as a slave. So Muhammad continuing to keep people as slaves. Sahih al-Bukhari 3765, 5541 and so on. Slaves working for Muhammad.
You know, he said that the Quran says that disbelievers are like cattle. It doesn't say that. It says, Belhum illa kal an'ami, Belhum adallu sabila. That they are like cattle. No, no, no. They are more astray than the cattle. And as we've seen today,
Worse than cattle. Worse than cattle.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? As we've
Cattle
seen today,
are better.
when the truth, okay, be quiet now, please. Don't waste my time. As we've seen today, everybody, we have seen today that that is the case. You're presented with straight facts and you cannot maneuver away from them. You cannot circumnavigate them. You cannot deal with them. You cannot hermeneutically, acrobatically, gymnastically get away from them. And the reality of the situation is you're dealt with the blunt truth in front of your face as clear as the day, and you're just scurrying, scared and absolutely anxious that someone like me, without a paper in my hand, knowing your scriptures more than you and knowing my scriptures more than you'll ever know, dealing with you in the way that I've dealt with you. The truth of the matter is, العبد بالعبد الحر بالحر والعبد بالعبد والأنثى بالأنثى. It was actually abrogated. Chapter 2 verse 178 was abrogated with the ayat in Surah Al-Ma'idah where it talks al-ayn bil-ayn, which is talking an eye for an eye, number one. So that's, and it wasn't what he thought it meant anyway, but it was abrogated in either event. Number one. Point number two, you keep mentioning Bilal. Yeah. Bilal was not a slave when he married Hala bint Auf. He was not a slave when he was literally ascending the Kaaba, telling the people, I am in charge now, reciting the call to prayer in front of all the Arabs who are literally below him in physical stature. How dare you talk about Bilal in that manner when the Prophet said he will be the one, he can hear his footsteps in Jannah. The things that he said about all the hadiths about black people being in hell, every single one of them is false. None of those hadiths use the word black, none of them. In fact, like I said, the opposite is true. We have explicit statements from the Prophet saying there's no virtue over a black man over a white man, or a white man over a black man, an Arab over a non-Arab. There is no such statement in the Bible. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, we find these genocides of the Amalekites who he admits to. He says this is them asking for it, basically. We want to be destroyed. No one asked for genocide, sorry to say. This is the kind of kalam that we find the Israelis doing with the Palestinians, inspired by that horrible Old Testament narrative. Moreover now, let's be honest. Let's be honest and say that even the New Testament, Jesus calling a non-Jewish person a dog. Yes, at the end of it, he said, okay, I'll give you whatever you want. But he still called her a dog because she was a Gentile. That's racism. Your book is fraught, saturated, filled, contaminated, polluted. It is seeping, brimming with racism, brimming with genocide, brimming with racism. You need us, my friend. We don't need anything from you. You come to us and you ask us, why was everything abrogated in the way it was? Because the Prophet Muhammad eliminated racism, the only person in his time to do so, and it was the only emancipatory discourse of any Abrahamic religion in the world, that is Islam. Come to it and stop being arrogant.
That's it. Finish.
All right, thank you very much, Muhammad.
Bye-bye.
Let's try and
That was good. Wow. That was amazing. Oh, destroy him.
please come
No, that's it. That's it.
all the Muslims.
No. That's it. Kill. That's finished.
I don't know.
stars. It's about Earth. And they've got like famous people already saying stuff about Earth and what. So they've got like Prince Charles and they've got like the other leaders of the church and stuff. So I'm in charge of the program myself as well. I'm doing aspects of the program. And I wanted to go and get the Islamic perspective. I was going to go see if I can meet.
do you want to do something?
I was hoping we could plan something. Is there much we could go to, or is there something over the planet?
No. If you order something, first thing it says is advice. Fa'il one first. Then it says fa again, whole order. Then the last.
Two ideas can coexist. The point that we were initially making with the gentleman earlier is we haven't seen evidence for God existing, okay? So we need to discuss that point.
Okay, yeah.
And then before we start, because for me it's, every time I'm at Speaker's Corner, always there's the debate of like, well, design, there must be a design, blah, blah, blah. To me it's irrelevant until I've been shown evidence that God actually exists.
So when you say evidence, are you looking for empirical evidence? What sort of evidence are you looking for?
Well, maybe something that you can somehow measure. For example, we can't see
that's
Wi-Fi. Okay, yeah. So we can't,
Measure empirically?
Okay, so let me explain. Okay, so for example, it doesn't have to be something we can see or touch because Wi-Fi you can't see and touch. Okay?
No, but you can measure
you
it.
Can see
you
that
can measure it, right?
Even if you don't measure Wi-Fi, you can get your phone, take a picture, send it to somebody, over here.
You're talking about wireless. You're talking about
So and then you could say, okay, well.
But all
it
those
seems
can
to
be measured.
Something like
that's what I'm saying. And all of that, what you're looking for is empirical evidence.
No, I'm not necessarily.
What other form of evidence would you accept?
No, I'm just explaining that it doesn't even have to go that far. Like, for example, with Wi-Fi, right? I don't know how to empirically take something and measure Wi-Fi, right? I just see a device which tells me.
So you're saying that that device is your that device which you're able to see the Wi-Fi connection is.
But so it's the effect. So for example, like dark matter, we can't see it, but we see the effects of it.
Right.
So that's how like some scientists say, okay, dark matter is something that cannot be observed, it cannot be seen, it cannot be touched, but we see the effects of it. So I think
the consciousness was a good example.
I think you're in a good place because the thing is, what you're saying is a lot of atheists will come and say, no, I want to see God, and we see that a bit arrogant. But you're saying, if you can show me, for example, some kind of evidence to that, I think it's in a good place.
So what you said earlier, I actually agree with, but there's one part I disagree with, which is that what we would say is when you talk about evidence, we would use design as evidence for God, and we would use biological design as evidence for God.
I think what you were saying is by using the word design, it's like design means that it's gone through a process of creation and whatever, okay? I don't see design, I see function. For example, you're talking about the deer, whatever. I see a deer functions in a certain way, right? I don't see any design necessarily, right? Whatever, I don't know. Forget the word design. All I see is function.
Okay, so the first thing that I think we should try and agree about, the word design is inescapable even if you're a materialistic atheist, because because when we're speaking about biological evolution, we're talking about functionality, like you pointed out. And for functionality to even make sense, we have to talk about why that thing does what it does. So design, even when it comes to the Dawkinites of the world, or even when it comes to people who are intelligent design proponents, both agree there is design. Okay. The disagreement is the Darwinists would say it's an illusion of design, and the intelligent design proponents would say it is design. So we can agree design is there.
Maybe it's because we are trying to comprehend certain things through how we see the world. So, for example, when we see an object, the object is usually designed from nothing straight away to something, right? So you see a phone, people like to use the phone example, right? When you design a phone, you start with a blank sheet of paper, then you say, okay, whatever, we're going to do this specification, whatever, right? But what if the way that it works is actually slow, intricate building on tiny little aspects, and then because that takes so long or whatever, it's actually difficult for us to comprehend that this just creates a certain function.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And
but
actually, a phone is actually kind of similar, because I don't think anybody, or very few people, know how every single component of a phone works, right? It's almost like a hive mind thing of where, for example, when you design a car, an engineer of a car works in their own little component, and they forget about everything else. That's their little world. But there's like 10,000 of them, and it eventually kind of comes together into
exactly. So you see, I don't disagree with most of what you're saying, but the evidence that I'm talking about is that when it comes to even the incremental, gradual components coming together, which is what the Darwinian argument is, that slow, steady progress led from simplicity to complexity, that still doesn't undermine that could be designed.
I mean, yeah. So if you again, the bottom line is, so I'm saying to you, okay, what's the evidence of God, right? You're saying to me design, correct?
So, one of them. Yeah, one of them.
So my evidence. So I'm just to clarify. I'm asking. Give me a reason why God exists. You say.
After you finish, it's okay if I can. Yeah, sure. It's okay.
You say because certain things work in a certain way, right?
No, why? Agree that it's not theoretically impossible that a God could have designed it, and then what happens?
No, it's not that. It's not that. So when it comes to God's existence, we don't just use one argument. We use multiple arguments. So we use like the design argument, contingency argument, consciousness argument, the argument from religious experience, moral argument. You have different arguments. But the point I was making is what you said earlier about evidence. We would say biological world is a signpost to the divine. Whether someone accepts particular evolutionary models or they do not, design is inescapable. Now the question really, what I said earlier, is it the case that the Darwinists are correct that there's an illusion of design, or is it the case that intelligent design proponents are correct that design means design? And that's the real discussion and debate.
Can I give an example? So it's okay. Yeah? So I think the whole argument for design is innate. Hey, how's it? Good. So the whole argument of design is innate. So you gave the example of the phone, yeah? I think we can kill two birds with one stone, because we talked about, for example, bad design and good design, yeah? If we opened up the iPhone and we saw, argument's sake, we saw something that looks very strange to us. Now, logically, we would think to ourselves, what's the function of that there? It's just sitting there doing nothing. It's not connected to anything. From our point of view, we might even doubt the one who made the phone and be like, hold on a second, that doesn't make sense to me, yeah? But the reason we're questioning bad design or good design, still we accept there's design, is because we do not understand the person who's made the phone has put that there for a reason, but because we can't comprehend it, we're going to equate bad design. Would that be fair?
Right, okay.
Okay, now, just that's the argument of bad design.
Scenario could happen.
Yeah, that can happen, yeah? But it doesn't mean it's bad design, it's because our comprehension is not to the level where the phone designer has done it, yeah? Okay, so coming back to your example, I believe the argument for design of God's existence is very clear. If you saw this phone, if you're walking down the road, yeah? Okay, have you seen this phone get made? This phone. Does it have design?
Well, no, this phone, no.
Okay, all right. Do you believe that this phone is designed because you went to the factory and saw it being assembled, or do you believe that it's designed from the mere fact that you can see design?
I believe that that phone is designed because, for example, in my personal experience, I know people who work in the same industry where they design objects, right? So if I see a phone, I'm combining loads of different bits of information in my head. Where, for example, I see, okay, that is plastic, right? Generally, in my life experience, I don't see plastic just in nature, right? Then I see that is glass. Okay, I generally don't see glass in nature. I also know in my life experience that people design objects, right? Because I've seen it happen, physically seen it. Okay, so these bits of information come together in my brain, and I'm saying, okay, probably a designed human-made object because of certain factors I've seen about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. Think about it. All the things that you mentioned about the glass and the plastic not coming together, and this information that you know some friends that work in a factory. Let's assume you know nothing about that. You don't know about no Apple factory. You just came, you was in a cave, you woke up. You're walking down the desert and you happen to see a phone. Do you believe, what's the first thing that will come to your mind? Would you, because you don't have information about a factory, somebody creating it, glass, plastic. You see a phone.
I honestly, genuinely, I don't know how to comprehend to start thinking about what I would think of an iPhone
No problem,
if I had no clue about factories. So I don't know. I can't answer that.
But the thing is, we're not asking about, oh, is that an iPhone? I don't want the information if it's an iPhone or not. Would you say it's designed or not designed?
Yeah, I think he's saying that, like, you know, if you're in a scenario where you're literally like your mind has been totally wiped of all information, right? You know, you're in a desert, you know, and you find like, okay, you find the phone object. It's like clearly weirded. It's clearly, you know, looks a bit different than some of the other stuff. But like, that doesn't mean you can infer it was designed.
No, 1 second. How so?
Which is to say, like, let's say that you're walking in the desert and you saw like a lizard or whatever, right? You know, that's clearly quite different than the sand and, you know, the sky, right? You know, that, you know, would you come to the, you know, you can come to the conclusion that's natural or that's designed. What I'm saying is that, like, you wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't have the frame of reference to know whether that's designed or not. You're like totally minded.
No, hold on a second.
No, actually, you use the word frame of reference. If we were to have a frame of reference for everything going back forever, we'd never have any knowledge in the first place. Ad infinitum.
Okay, but he said, he mentioned without a frame of reference.
No. But you said for you to judge something is design, you need a frame of reference. You said that, right? No, you don't.
Yeah, like, I think your idea, I think, is that if you suddenly lose all this kind of evidence that we get from sort of science and experience, then, and that's all wiped and we wake up, we don't actually know the kind of the laws of the universe. And so if we exited that cave and we see a lizard and we see a phone, for all we know, we could be in a kind of universe where both of those things just like spontaneously pop out, so that sort of thing.
That's just
so wait a second. You only find out how the universe
do you actually agree with that? Do you actually, because that's very interesting right there.
That's more or less what I was saying, which is to say, you know, if you totally have no frame of reference, if you don't have all the other information which you're getting, you know, you could live in a universe where the phone is natural and the
but you know, from my perspective, when someone says what he said, which is that it could have popped into existence spontaneously, the lizard in the phone, as opposed to being designed, it does sound kind of absurd.
No, but that's only in this scenario where we don't know anything else.
Well, people believed it.
Yeah, some people do, sadly.
But that's a slight misrepresentation of what I was saying.
Field mouse, which would be spawned automatically.
No. Hear what I'm saying, I'm saying, my argument is the following. You guys would, by your very innate disposition, would agree that anything you see, it can be a water bowl, it can be a book, it can be a phone. You do not need prior information to claim its design. You don't, because for example, did you go to the Apple factory to see this phone get made?
I didn't.
Okay, is this phone designed?
Yeah, but
it's like what you said.
I do need prior information.
No, you don't. You're saying we don't.
No, let me tell you why. Tell me why I'm wrong. You do not need.
You just made a claim.
No, I'm making a claim. Tell me why I'm wrong. Have you gone to the Apple factory to see this phone get made?
No.
Okay. Do you believe it's designed?
Yes.
Why?
I've explained to you because I see certain materials in it.
That's my argument.
Yeah, no, but the crucial part of but you said basically you see components that you know could not arise by themselves in nature.
No, let me finish. Why do you? No,
That's what I'm saying. So I see my brain sees an object, right? And then it uses its past experience, for example, seeing plastic, not being in nature, whatever. All these little things, bits of information my brain analyzes. Okay, that from that makes me feel that it's been designed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, what you're doing is you haven't gone to the factory, you haven't seen it made, but you've seen that plastic cannot be made in the nature, glass cannot be made in nature, the components that it has cannot be made in the nature, so you came to the conclusion, the rational conclusion, it has to be designed.
By a human,
By a human. So then when we use the same principle and look at a lizard, or look at a giraffe, or look at an elephant, then how could someone who has, we have to be consistent here.
We'll be consistent.
Okay, so I'm not saying you're not, by the way.
No, of course.
So we'll have to be consistent and say, hold on a second. If I use my mind, my rationality, my logic to look at a phone and come to an agreement that the plastic and the glass and the components cannot just be made by nature, it requires a human being for it to come into form.
Make the phone,
Okay, then can we not use the same logic and apply it to the trees and the sun and the stars and animals? Tell me why.
No, because you're taking the phone, okay, and then you're taking a piece of nature, right, and you're comparing them as if they're two things, right? But actually what the phone is the phone is a component inside the nature, if that makes sense.
The animal not?
No, so what I'm saying is, the phone is, we know that humans exist, right? So, and humans are part of nature.
What if you never saw humans? Would you deny that it was designed?
No, but hang on, let's talk. We've seen humans, right? So I can't say I've never. I can't answer to the thing of like, what if I've never seen an iPhone and my brain has been wiped? I don't know.
So like, just quickly, so like, what my friend, I think he's doing is basically saying we can infer that the phone is designed because it's quite different than natural stuff, right? And then you're saying, well, dude, can we not do the same thing with natural stuff and say, well, it's quite different than what?
But isn't that inconsistency? Because what you're saying is the following.
What I'm saying is that you're determining it's artificial by comparing it to stuff which is natural.
No, but you just because it's natural.
So can I ask a question here?
Sure.
Someone as intelligent as Darwin, and even people before him, right? And many people on Earth that have existed in the past, that exist today and will exist in the future, for them this is a quite intuitive conclusion. Why do you think that is?
That's my argument.
As in, like, what's an intuitive argument? But to say that, like, they would require no outside stimuli whatsoever to determine one design.
No. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when they look at nature, it's quite intuitive to say, well, it doesn't really make sense that there's nothing behind this.
Yes.
Okay.
Even if people change their minds later.
I mean, there's loads of stuff Darwin said. I'm pretty sure that was completely ridiculous. I swear he was really into like inbreeding and all this weird stuff.
So I gave his partial view. There was a time in which he was a Christian. There was a time in which he was a deist. When he published The Origin of Species, he actually was a deist. He still believed in God. His reason for becoming an atheist in the last decade of his life was the problem of evil and suffering, right? So I'm not saying he held one view. You can't really pigeonhole the guy. The guy has quite. I agree. I agree. But the point we're trying to get to is what's absurd about the views that we're speaking of right now.
Yeah.
What's, for example, the way I articulated the view, the way Ali did. What's absurd about this?
You're the one saying their view is absurd, though, aren't you?
No, okay. But look, when it comes to our particular view, we are saying this is a logical argument, right? So, what my question is, what's wrong with this argument?
Yeah. Why is it illogical?
Okay. So like, what you say, and do correct me if I'm wrong. Like, my understanding is that the argument is, you're saying that the intuitive part is basically, people can look at a design thing and they'll say, well, they can tell innately that it's designed. They can tell, and they don't really require any outside reference for that. And so when they look more closely at parts of nature, they see that it has, it has some of the functions and some of the hallmarks of design, and therefore they draw an analogy and can say, well, this looks designed to me.
Yes.
Right, and why do I think that's well?
Why is that wrong?
Sure, the intuitions can totally be wrong. First of all,
why?
Why? Do you not think intuitions can be wrong?
No. When it comes to the argument of me seeing this, and I have no prior knowledge of Apple, I have never seen human being. I woke up in a.
We can't keep talking about the iPhone in that context.
Why not? Why not?
Because we're not in that context.
No, let's not about
The fact of the matter is that every single person here that looks at the iPhone has that context, right?
Why? Because most of these people, they have never gone to a factory, and my argument
but I've
is,
explained.
but they believe this is design, not because they believe Apple's factory exists, because they can see design. That's my argument. I'm trying to present here that yes,
every single person might have a different reason.
No.
I'm sure someone here or someone in the surrounding area maybe has been to an Apple factory. We don't know.
No, but the point is this. They believe, if I went to them and they said, I went to the Apple factory and I saw it get made, I'll ask him the same question. If you didn't go to the Apple factory, would you say, you know what, mate, I've never gone to an Apple factory, I've never seen an iPhone, this is not design. I'll say, you're crazy. My point is the following. Not that you went to the Apple factory or you didn't, because you're still in the same position. If you went to the Apple factory, it's good, you've got more clear understanding how the components were made. Yeah. But this doesn't negate the fact that it's design. So my question, when I put you guys in the position where I say you woke up in the cave, you're walking down the road, it can be anything, it can be a bike, it can be a bottle, it can be a watch. When you see it, the fact that it's shaped in that manner, you have to beg the question, why is it that shape and who designed it? Now you tell me why you would not come to that conclusion. That's what I want to know.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. So you're asking me, what exactly you're asking me?
I'm asking you the following. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I don't get to the point.
That's fine.
We all woke up in a cave. What's your name?
Alexi.
Yeah. Max. Yeah. I woke up and I go, hi, Alexi, what's your name? You're like, Alexi. And I'm like, what's your name? Max. Okay, let's take a little walk, mate. I don't know, we just woke up in this cave. It looks like there's sun outside, yeah? Let's go out. We walk in and then we come across an object. Now I take this and I go, Alexi, what the hell is this? Yeah? And I say to you guys, what are those dots? Yeah? Right. What is the first conclusion that we as human beings come to? When we see this, do we say, what is the first conclusion that we come to? Firstly, what's it doing?
Even if we've never seen an iPhone.
Never seen it.
Never seen an iPhone.
Never.
Never. Have we seen a bottle?
Never. You haven't seen anything. You just woke up.
I just want to say, like, if you live in, if you live in a world in which you've never seen any evidence of human artifice at all, right? And you come across something which, to a modern person, would obviously be an element, something made by a human being, like an iPhone. Yeah. That person would not know whether it's made by a human being or not.
No, not human being. Was it designed?
Designed by a human being or not? Same thing.
What would you? Surely. Well, I'm looking for one second. I'm looking for one thing. Me personally, I'm asking myself. Yeah. I would look at that and say, someone or something.
Okay, fine. Well, I would look at it and say, I don't know. Why was it designed?
I don't have any reason.
Maybe it's not.
No. You just said, why was it designed?
Well, I'm asking you, as in, if we were next to each other and you said, we've just found this phone, we don't know anything, you said, it's been designed, and I'd say,
funny kind of rock.
It's a weird, it's just a rock. What is it? I don't know.
Okay, no problem. But the point is this. If I said it's designed,
I have no reason to think it's designed.
You would not think it's designed?
No, why would I?
Okay, one second. So let me get this right. You're going to walk and you see a phone.
Let's get this right. First of all, the premise of what you're saying is that we woke up, we don't know anything, okay? So yes, in that premise...
anything designed by humans.
Yeah, I've never seen anything designed by humans. So yes, in that premise, why would I think that that's designed? I wouldn't. I would just say it's an object, whatever.
Okay, so you just say it's an object that's...
I probably wouldn't think that it's been designed.
You probably have to take us to the Apple factory.
Okay, one second. So you wouldn't think it's designed?
No. Why would I?
I don't think you think it's designed either.
No, one second. How could you... Okay, does this have a specific shape?
Okay, can I summarize? So Alexi, can I summarize the problem? The problem seems to be the atheist is in a dilemma of either they have to infer God or they have to be inconsistent.
No. Right? The problem is that the whole argument for the last 10, 15 minutes, whatever, we've been talking about, you've had to create some weird hypothetical.
No, logical.
Okay?
Very logical.
No, but it's a hypothetical where you're saying, if this and if that, well, the reality is, let's talk about the reality of, an iPhone we know has been designed because we see bits of information, right? That iPhone has been designed by humans. So we know, that it's been designed because we see people who make things, right? But when it comes to you saying the argument of design being as an evidence of God, that's where we see no evidence.
Okay. So
the evidence of this.
Can I summarize what you're saying? What you're saying is for us to be able to know that this tree was designed by God, we would have to see God designing trees.
Yes.
No.
You don't. So, okay, you're not. Okay, you're not saying that. It's fine. It's fine.
I'll take that, which is to say.
Oh, you'll agree with that. Okay, he disagrees with that.
Which is to say that, like, if we lived in the universe where we.
Okay.
We'll go back to the cave.
Sure.
I'm in the cave. I've never seen anything designed by a human before. Right? Yes. So you show me the iPhone. Yes. I would say I have no idea what that is, and you're going to tell me it's designed, right? You're going to have to show me and evidence that it's designed, which is to say you're going to have to take me to the Apple factory.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Wait. Okay, good. One second. The problem here is this: the dilemma. You just interrupted in the conversation. The dilemma that you're in at the moment is this. So if you're saying God has to be, you have to see it in the same way the Apple factory, then most of human knowledge, we have to render it useless. Because human knowledge is based upon testimony, not on empiricism.
Sure, I get it.
Right? So the dilemma, so let me lay out the dilemma for the atheist. The dilemma is, you either have to be inconsistent in your epistemology, or you have to infer God's existence.
Yeah. Well, everyone has to choose their authorities.
Where's the inconsistency in the epistemology?
I was just going to ask, where's the inconsistency?
Okay, the inconsistency in the epistemology is that you want empirical epistemology in your knowledge, in your knowledge about knowledge, in your hierarchy of how
you decide what to believe in.
Yeah. So the fact is, the dilemma I'm pointing out is, either you have to infer God's existence, or you have to be inconsistent in your epistemology.
So where am I inconsistent?
Well, you aren't, but you aren't because you. No. He's not right now in this context because he agreed that he wants to see God making it. You said you don't need to see that. So that's why the dilemma is here, and the dilemma is this: anything that you believe in, for example, you believe in the Big Bang model. You believe that's a valid model, right?
Yeah.
Have you got any empirical evidence for that?
I do. I'm believing scientists.
But that's testimony. That's not empiricism.
Correct. You're right. I believe lots of historical facts too. That's also a testimony. I also, that's true. I'm obviously picking authorities. Some of them I'm believing, and some of them I'm not believing.
So therefore.
How much predictive power their predictions correspond to? Like if someone can say I have a model of physics and it can predict this, and this, and all those things come true, then you believe what they're saying.
Firstly, we both agree on the issues that's happening right now. So the problem is about how you define what you believe to be evidence, right? Now, evidence should not be only empirical. Do you agree with that? No. Okay, you believe evidence should be empirical only.
I mean, it depends on what you think of as empirical, which is to say, you have a number of beliefs which are just like necessary for functioning, which you're not going to bother testing on a day-to-day basis, right? I functionally believe like a whole bunch of stuff, right? Which I haven't bothered to test, and I've just believed that the guy who told me that that's true is like, that's testimony. That totally happens, right? I don't know how my phone works. Maybe it's fairies. But the scientist who makes the phone says, hey, it's like a bunch of electro waves that do a bunch of cool stuff. I buy it. I haven't tested all that stuff. You're right. I do take stuff on authority. But you're saying, back to the, with regards to your analogy, I'm not seeing my inconsistency, which is to say that, like, without a, I don't have I don't have a reference. I don't have like I don't buy the authority. I don't have an authority which says, well, it's all design.
I'm not making that argument.
Sure.
What I'm trying to say is that evidence. What I'm saying is evidence should not only be empirical. And you said you disagreed with that.
When it comes to like, so if I have to, if you ask me to like rigorously test something, then I have to have empirical evidence. But functionally, practically, I don't actually bother with that on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so you agree that evidence should not only be empirical. That's the point I'm trying to make. Because I think that's a super important point.
Depends on what you're trying to do.
Okay, good. So if you are trying to, for example, learn about the existence of Napoleon, say, right? Sure. You're not going to have any empirical evidence for that. It's going to be testimonial.
Well, empirical
there's
evidence
there's
is
empirical
evidence you
for the-
experience.
There's empirical evidence for the existence of Napoleon.
Yeah.
No, there's no empirical evidence. There's testimonial evidence.
No, but those are the same thing.
No, they're
empirical,
not.
Empirical evidence just means evidence you experience.
No, no.
Sure.
Are you saying testimony and empiricism is the same thing?
Yeah, if you Google empirical, then it says something you experience.
Okay. So
Something you can measure,
firstly,
something that you can.
Firstly,
feel.
look. Let's look at it this way.
Non-empirical evidence would be like a mathematical argument.
To make a solid argument, you can't just say if you Google it, this is the definition. When it comes to testimony is a source of knowledge independent of empiricism. He's saying it's the same thing, but it's not.
So where are you drawing the line? Which is to say, like, let's say there's like some sort of super smart scientific study about something, right, which demonstrates X, right? And you've read the study, right? Like, you're operating, let's say it's been like 100% empirical thing, and some guy's written about it, right? The guy who has read the study and believes it, but wasn't there for the experiment. Like, is he operating only on the basis of testimony, or is he also partaking in some degree in empirical evidence?
The way you described it, he's believing it on testimony.
Okay, sure.
And most human knowledge, and I'm gonna state this quite openly. Anyone can challenge it.
Sure.
Most human knowledge is testimonial.
Yeah. Okay. Then in that case, then I get what
So
you
the reason why I'm taking it this way is because you earlier said something which I'm trying to get you to reflect about, which is empirical is not the only type of evidence.
So God's making the tree. You don't need to see God to make the tree to believe that.
Look, when it comes to epistemology, one of the reasons why people turn towards atheism is because they are in an epistemic cage, but they don't realize it. And what we as Muslims are trying to do is, when we're speaking about God's existence, we're not just speaking about an argument. We're trying to say your epistemology, if it's going to be inconsistent and constrictive, then let's open it up.
Sure. I get what you're saying. Well, at least I think so, and you correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Sure.
Which is you're saying now, okay, well, you're asking to see the iPhone factory in the cave, and I'm asking to see I'm asking to see the iPhone factory in the cave, and I'm asking to see the tree factory on Earth. And that's because I'm not, I'm asking for empirical evidence when for a lot of stuff I ask for testimonial evidence.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that sometimes you reject testimony. You don't always accept testimony.
Yes, and there's a whole science of thinking about testimony, and I use science in a non-scientific sense here, as in a methodology. Sure.
Which is to say that basically I'm rejecting when I'm in the cave with my friend here, Ali. And he's saying, "Hey man, this is definitely designed." I'm rejecting his test, and I'm saying, "I don't know, man. How the hell would you know that?" I'm rejecting his testimony. I'm saying, I'm not buying it. I'm looking at stuff with my, I have some empirical evidence. Everyone has some empirical evidence. I'm saying, this, you haven't met my bar for testimony which I just incorporate.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example, right? Say, for example, you get somebody that runs over from a Marble Arch and says, "There's a pink rhino going crazy on the underground, going absolutely berserk." One person is saying this. That's a testimony. That doesn't mean that testimony we should accept. Right? If 5 people come who are independent from each other, and somebody Googles it and they find out it's been reported by the BBC, it's all testimonial. Now we have reasons to start believing it, right?
Oh, sorry, go back. I was totally spaced
So,
out.
okay,
Sorry.
no worries. So, the first time, one person comes and says there's a pink rhino going crazy on the underground, hitting people. We don't really have good reasons to believe one person who comes up with something that sounds quite absurd. However, if 5-6 people come independently from Marble Arch, and you Google it on your phone, and BBC is reporting on this, and more people are talking about it, now you have reasons to start believing something, right? So we're not making the argument that you just believe anyone's testimony. There's a science of testimony. So the point of bringing up this conversation is that for us to have a meaningful dialogue about God's existence, our epistemology has to be clearly defined. Because if the epistemology is what you were saying earlier, that the only type of evidence is empirical evidence, we're not going to get anywhere.
Okay. I mean,
it depends what you mean by
again,
evidence.
Sorry.
Depends what you mean.
Okay. So, by the way, look, you two. I'm interacting with you the first time. I just want to explain why I'm ignoring James. Right? I love having conversations with whoever comes to the park, but James came here with a copy of the Quran to burn it. Since then, I'm not talking to him. So if I'm ignoring him, that's the reason why. And I want to talk to you guys.
Okay with apostates being killed, by the way?
I want to. I want to have a
I think he is.
I want to have a
And yet he
discussion.
thinks that burning a book is bad,
I
but
want to have a
killing people
discussion
who
with
leave
you
Islam
guys.
is good.
But because we were talking to you guys before he actually came, I want to explain why I'm ignoring him, or else I talk to everybody. Yeah. So, do you agree with this point about epistemology that testimony is a form of evidence? Because I'm about to make another argument from this.
Yeah, testimony is a kind of evidence, and you can use it to, make good guesses about what's true and what isn't true, depending on the circumstance.
Sure. So about testimony, I want to make a different argument, just to take the conversation in a different direction. So, what do you think about the testimony from people that have spiritual experiences? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm afraid you must have inferred it already from my thing. I don't buy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think? If you have people from all across the world that have this idea about spirituality and how it impacts their lives and how having a meaningful relationship with God makes them happier and how it's something which gives them this sort of existential backdrop within which to live their lives, what do you think about these types of things? Have you looked into it? I mean, even atheists like Sam Harris are talking about spirituality now.
I get what you're saying, which is to say, I could totally buy, we could totally live in the universe, and it's, where, it's way better to be, a religious person. Religious belief is very helpful, does all sorts of stuff. You notice stuff like, if you go look at Latin America, the more religious people, the guys who go to church more, they do less crimes. There's all sorts of good stuff that you can say about religion. And they could say a bunch of other stuff, right, too. That doesn't mean that, every jot and tittle of their story, is 100%.
I agree with that. I agree. You see, the argument I'm making is not that, exactly like you said, because people have religious experiences, we can believe whatever books they believe in or whatever ideas they have. I'm not saying that. Yeah. What I'm saying is, if we have a sociological, cross-cultural, almost universal consensus that spirituality is something that whether you're an atheist, you're a Hindu, you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, people are speaking about, then there must be some reality to this world of spirituality.
The definition of spirituality is so subjective and so broad. For example, you could say, like an atheist could say they feel spiritual by sitting in the field. What does spiritual mean? I mean, does spiritual just mean you feel calm and your mind is running clear, or does spiritual mean God has touched you? What does that mean?
See, now this is the point I totally agree with you. Someone can have a discussion about spirituality and, like you said, say, for me, spirituality is when I go for a run and I exhaust myself and I look up at the stars, right? Exactly. Somebody else says it's about God. Now the question is, what is spirituality? So I'm going to give you my perspective and you can share your perspective. What I want you to establish first is there is a reality of spirituality that we're all trying to understand.
No, wait. If you're saying it's all very broad, it's difficult because this is the thing. It's not such a specific definition that I think you can then say it's so broad across the world in the sense of it's such a broad thing that maybe it's not that broad across the world.
Okay, yeah, maybe it's not. I mean? Maybe it's not. I'm not saying I agree with the idea that spirituality is exhausting yourself and looking at the stars, which I have heard before, by the way. The point I was making is we should first look at, okay, there is a reality of spirituality. Now let's have a discussion what my view is and what your view is.
Right? Allow me my quibble quickly then.
Sure.
Which is that, I'll agree to, spirituality and things like religion and religious experiences, they definitely have an effect on Earth and the reality that there is. So I'll grant you that. Same too with black magic and witches,
By the way, as Muslims, we do believe magic exists.
Sure, that's fine, dude. But, hey man, that's not everyone,
well, actually...
I'm sure there are things which you don't believe exist, which have an effect on Earth.
Which we don't believe exist but have an effect. What
I mean is that some guy has a subjective experience of something, right? So let's say that you actually have Christians do stuff, you're not a Christian, or you can have some sort of animist in, deep Central Africa, right? And, they'll have some sort of religious experience, something they believe is a religious experience, and they'll go off and do stuff because of it, right?
Yeah.
That you believe that religious experience is not a real religious experience, it's not actually from God, but it has an actual effect on the earth.
Okay, the way that we would explain it is, if a Christian comes up to me and says that they had a spiritual experience, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with the metaphysical experience they had, I would disagree with the inferences that they made. For example, there's a belief that we hold as Muslims, which is actually quite cross-cultural, which is about people having dreams about the future. You get this in every society. Now, if a Christian or a Jew or an atheist comes up to me and says, I saw this dream, and exactly that happened a year later, as it was told to me in the dream, I'm not going to outright reject that. What I would outright reject is their possible interpretation of that, where they would say it's due to the devil or whatever.
But you must say that certainly you believe that there's a possibility that they actually didn't have like a religious experience that was actually inspired by anything divine.
That's possible too. It's possible too.
It's possible,
Yeah.
and it may have happened.
You see, this is why I want to describe what my view is on spirituality as a Muslim, and from there we can look at alternative views, because I believe this is an area, like you mentioned, we can't have this type of, okay, my view I can objectively prove to you is correct. What I can do is say, here's my view, think about it.
Sure. I get what you're saying.
So, no, it's not. It's about spirituality.
But you. So just to be
So,
clear,
shall I explain what my view is?
I'll go for it.
Okay. The view that we hold as Muslims is this. We're made up of this physical body. And for this physical body, you need water, you need food, you need these things. Physical things from the ground can sustain you. But we also have a soul. And the soul is fulfilled with the remembrance of God. Now, the spiritual experiences that we have with God, they give us certainty. And that certainty is not something that you can put in a test tube or you can actually empirically verify, but for you it is objective, although for others it may be subjective, right? So as Muslims, in the Quran it says, truly in the remembrance of God do hearts find peace. So what I would say to somebody is, I wouldn't say this is a logical, empirical argument and you need to accept it. What I would say is, you should try Islamic spirituality. You should look into the truthfulness of Islam. And it is something that I know people myself who, they weren't convinced about Islam until they spiritually tried it out. And that was for them the ultimate proof.
Sure, I can buy that. Which is to say that, yeah, dude, I mean, like, I imagine there's a lot of people, including a lot of atheists, who, if they grabbed they adopted their religion, they'd be way better off. Right? Totally plausible, right? Tons of religions have totally great results for their convertees and their devotees. But that isn't an argument, which is to say that, like,
I didn't say it's an argument.
I totally get you. I'll just I know you didn't say it, but I will say that.
Okay.
That isn't an argument that is true.
I would say it's kind of like a sales pitch. It's kind of like.
But that all you're doing is basically, essentially, if you're breaking something down to the bare bones, is you're essentially saying you're selling the idea that holding a certain belief structure, right? Essentially breaking down what you're saying, holding a certain belief structure generally helps people, right?
I'm not saying that.
Also, you're not saying.
No. What I was saying is something I do try and say in the park is, look, when it comes to, say, God's existence, right? We have, say, the design argument, cosmological argument, contingency argument, consciousness argument, moral argument, so on and so forth. Then we have arguments why we believe the Quran to be true. But something which isn't really discussed much at Speaker's Corner is, apart from the intellectual arguments from God, is the spiritual experience with God. And that is something quite significant. And it's not an argument. I'm not making an argument.
Because it's so broad, like I said, unfortunately, so many people are, to put it lightly, quite full of shit, in the sense that if they may not have much going on in their life, then their brain will look for something to then say, I've had a spiritual experience. I have significance now, It's a great way for someone to psychologically kind of reset themselves and say, oh, I found this thing, I've had this experience, And dude, I mean, it could literally be, maybe they...
Yeah, but look, I agree. Look, I 100% agree with you. But what I would but what I would say is, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah. Okay. So let's not. Yes, you do have situations like that, but that doesn't mean that we just give up and we don't even try and look at what the reality is. Okay. It's like a scientist, yeah? So a scientist is trying to work out why a particular phenomena takes place. There are many different interpretations. A scientist is not going to turn around and say, too much complexity, there's too many interpretations, I give up. They'll be like, okay, let's try and figure out what's going on, and let's work out the best explanation. And that's all I'm saying here as well. And going back, I mean, Ali wanted to take it back to design argument, but I want to make that point.
We accepted the premise that sometimes we don't need empirical evidence to come to an understanding that something may be designed or not designed. Or we use testimony in general. So coming back to the argument of you wanting to see God make the tree, now we can come to a conclusion that just because you didn't, or you will never see God making the tree, doesn't mean, it goes back to the argument of design, that it is not designed. Do we accept that now? Because you said...
So we accepted that right at the beginning, which is to say we already accepted that, like, there are a million scenarios in which you could have a... You could imagine it. It's not, like, impossible.
Okay, so if that's the case, then how can we then... I still believe the atheist position is inconsistent, because we're looking at other material objects, and those things that you wear, you use your logic on a day-to-day basis. You wake up, you go to the fridge, and you see your shoe there. You're not going to be like, no, you're going to come to the conclusion of, why is my shoe in the fridge? Yeah? You use your logic throughout your life. Why is it that when it comes to that, there is a high probability, not probability, there's certainty that God exists, the logic, it's as if atheists just come and say, oh, let me take up my skepticism.
Why would I suddenly believe that? So someone's,
why do you believe
in my life experience, someone has come to me, okay? I see certain things, right? I see the world, right? Yeah. Someone has come to me and said, this is God. God exists, okay?
Yeah.
Okay? Well, all right, you've said that to me. You've said to me God
exists. No, proving, not say.
No. But this is the thing, is you've said, okay, well, God exists because this tree works really nicely. That's essentially
No. I've said you look at things that are material objects and you see them working really nicely, and you equate that to a human being that has created it. But when you look at the nature...
Well, no, actually, if you compare the complexity of, say, that tree to your iPhone, that iPhone is like a blip. It's nothing compared to the complexity of that tree.
And that is my argument.
Actually, no, the tree is way more complex.
That's what I'm saying.
You're saying that. Sorry.
It's way more complex. The most powerful supercomputer couldn't simulate like a worm.
DNA.
Yeah. So
one little
exactly. So that's why I see the iPhone as way more primitive as an object.
Yeah.
So for me, I can see that comprehend that somebody would have designed it, right? So that's why I categorize those things separately, right?
But that's my argument. What you just said now, my point is this here. And by the way, I want to make something clear, because I know we're in Speaker's Corner, egos can get in the way.
Sorry?
Our egos can get in the way. I'm not here to win a point over you. I'm not here to make you look like a fool. All I'm doing is I'm just trying to make an argument, and that's what I just want to make that clear, because you know, for the park, it's like, oh, I scored a point. I'm not here to do that. I'm genuinely, because I believe that there is a creator, and I would like to invite everybody to that. And as much as you believe there isn't, and you would want to convince me. So when you said the tree is much more complex than a phone, a DNA is millions and billions times more complex than a phone. How is it that we look at a phone and we equate it to design, even if we, like I said before, the cave incident or not cave incident, we go to the factory, we never saw the factory. We still come to the conclusion that it's design. Why is it that we don't do the same with the tree and the DNA?
Well, because the way that the tree works and the way that the tree looks is completely different to how the iPhone works.
How does that negate design?
Well, because we see things that are man-made that there are certain consistencies in them, in that they work actually very differently to things that we see in what we would define as nature, right? So I don't think there's a single man-made object that works very similarly.
But it doesn't need to. But the point is this: the tree might be more complex in its structure and the way it works. But the point is, if you're looking at a phone and the phone is primitive and the way it works is not as complex as that, you accept that as a design. But
it's not just that. There's so many different factors where my brain looks at something and makes. So, like I said before, again, the argument of what my brain sees the phone is made of, then you can see that the way that the phone operates, all of these different things come together, which make me conclude that it's been designed. Not to mention the knowledge of, knowing that that's a thing that happens that people do, right?
Why don't you apply that with the nature, though?
Sorry?
Why don't you apply that when you see a lizard or a tree or the sun or the stars or the earth? Why don't you, I'm saying, why is there inconsistency? Whereas with the phone and the bottle and the scarf and it's got...
Well, because I know from my knowledge, I know that the phone has been specifically made to make phone calls, for example.
No problem.
I know that the phone is specifically... Well, this is the thing. I have no information that concludes to me that the tree was made for a specific thing. The tree just exists. All I see that the tree exists. Okay, I could guess or try and make an idea in my head as to why it exists, which is probably, in my opinion, how religion comes about. Where people are trying to understand and explain why these things are amongst us, right?
Okay,
but
so
for me, I think it's very bare bones, okay? So I see a tree, okay? Have I got any information that it's been designed? No, I haven't. I simply have no information that it's been designed. I see that it works well, but the iPhone works well, but that's not the reason that I think it's designed. I think it's designed because of it has writing on it, for example. So
what writing?
Well, the iPhone has a logo on it, for example, right?
Okay, but what about DNA?
Okay. No, but that's the thing, is I see certain man-made elements, so I'm like, okay, this looks man-made.
No, so because it says made in China, designed by Apple. Is that what?
Well, yeah, it's writing, so it's like language.
But we came to the conclusion that, for example, empirically, that it's like saying as good as God writing down made by God. I don't necessarily need someone to tell me made by God, because I use my logic, which I use on a day-to-day basis when I'm walking out and I see.
But I mean, if a tree had some writing on it, which only God could write, which said made by God, then I'd probably believe in God.
Would you not? No. When that happens, would you say maybe somebody went and put that in the tree?
No. But then, that's what I'm saying. Is if I knew for a fact nobody could have written that. If it's in, the point is when I read language, okay, I see that it's not natural, because the only.
Do you mean like a book?
Well, like a book, for example, you can see. I know in my experience that only humans write.
Okay. What about DNA? Because DNA is information.
Okay.
Okay, it's information that you might not understand, but it works like codes. Yeah.
Right.
Like algorithms, you can say.
Well, I don't know how DNA works.
Okay, no problem. But DNA is information. Do we accept that?
Okay.
But it's a molecule.
So what? So what's that mean? Let me use your words. It's a mango.
Is it information? No, but is it information? The question is DNA information, or is
information.
Or are we calling it information because that's how we comprehend how it works?
No. Because what we see is when you look at it, the DNA is like a factory. It's a building blocks, and we are all made of DNA. We are all made of DNA. So the argument is the following: if you're looking for information and a signature, the DNA is more complex than anything, any kind of literature. All the books in the world, if you gather them together. Now the question that needs to be asked is: you have a cell which is composed of DNA, and it's a factory. It's literally the way how you look, how I look, how Sabur looks. It is our DNA. So the question is this: that is information. Like you said, the book has information. You give it an author or someone that designed it. What about DNA?
No, but that's the thing is, I haven't seen it. First, if I look at a piece of DNA, if I could, or if I look at a cell, okay, through a microscope of like a leaf, okay, there's nothing in that. When my eyes see that and my brain takes in all the information that comes with that, for me, there's no information there which indicates that somebody has designed it. It doesn't have, for example, right? So it doesn't have, for example, clear, visible, man-made materials like plastic.
No, why man-made?
It doesn't have.
No, but this is not man-made. That's the point. It's not man-made. Look, you're saying if it's man-made, I can deduce and say, you know what?
Sure. So Ali, can I make
So sorry. Yeah. But when it's immaterial, and it's not plastic, it's not glass, and it's still functioning, this is what I'm saying, it's inconsistent, because then what you're doing is you're looking at the DNA and thinking, there's no plastic, why does it have to be plastic? Doesn't it show you that it works with no plastic, no kind of energy, but it's forming things? Doesn't that give you a basic, logical, rational understanding that, hold on a second, who made this?
No, it doesn't mean that somebody...
Can I just share a little story? So, on BBC Question Time, there was this guy, this famous clip online, this guy who was a militant atheist, right?
Okay.
And he was on this show and they were having this discussion about religion and this type of thing. And he actually gave the exact example that you gave, that he was studying the cell. And before that, he used to be a militant atheist. And the more he started looking at the cell, and he was somebody that was studying evolutionary biology at university,
right.
He looked at that and then he said, do you know what? I just don't think this could be by chance. So he did a process of elimination and he inferred from that design. Now what I see in the way that you're thinking is, you're thinking that's not enough, that his conclusion was wrong. You're saying there needs to be other markers which are there to point to God apart from design. Okay, so
just because something works in my brain, just because something works well doesn't mean it's been
designed.
So
Ali, one second.
It's something that I observe. So I'm not. The thing is, from my position, I'm not claiming to, if I see something, to then have the answer. Okay, I see.
What do you call it?
So just before that,
an object.
Well, something that would come about through unconscious processes.
The unconscious process.
Yeah, like there's a dichotomy, right?
So unconscious, but unconscious design.
Like surely anything is either designed
So,
or it has
so
come
look,
about from
the point I'm
unconscious
trying to
processes
make
like,
is
forces of nature, like a snowflake.
the
That's very
reason why
pretty, but it wasn't
the reason why that person's inference you would say is incomplete because you're looking for some other markers. Now, what I want you to do is, can you just specify what those markers are? Firstly, two, can you specify why his inference is incomplete?
Okay, so like I said, the markers that I'm looking for is, so with the iPhone, the markers that I look for is things that I know are man-made, right? So like the plastic, whatever, right? So there are certain things in my life experience that I can see that humans make things, they have certain characteristics, right? So when I look at the cell, okay, I don't see... And that whole thing is based on having seen humans make things.
Okay, so I have
Yeah.
so I have a good example for you. Within the cell, we have rotors, we have valves, we have very similar mechanics to the sort of interior in any sort of.
Right, but that's a lot of the time, design, human-made design, right? So, for example, planes, whatever,
is inspired by nature.
They are inspired by nature, right?
Yeah.
So you see that something works, okay, and you're like, oh, that works. You know, a wing creates lift, but birds have this similar. You know, you try that and then it works, so then you do it, and then it's become a man-made object.
So we
right?
learn
So
it
a lot
from
of
nature.
the time,
Sure,
a lot of the time
but okay. So now we're getting to a good point.
Yeah.
You are absolutely correct. There are times where we take inspiration from nature. For example, a good example is one of the Boeing planes. I think it's the A380. It had a very large wingspan, and it had a problem with turbulence as it was landing. So, based upon the design of the Eagle, it actually had these flaps to try and break the turbulence, right? So you're right. However, there are also times where human beings have come up with design independently, and then they found out that design also existed in nature. So sometimes it's the opposite.
I'm really interested in that. What is that?
So, for example, there's certain things in nanotechnology which we've designed, and those things, when we look into the human cell, we actually find out that components pretty similar to what we've designed independently exist in nature.
But sorry to ask for you to be so specific, but could you expand on that more? Because is that like the logic works the same way, or is that like the physical elements that are there are the same? Because it's quite different. Like it's quite often that if you're trying to solve a problem, that you'll come to quite a logical conclusion. You know, maybe the logic would work in a similar way.
Okay,
the eagle one in the plane, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, sure.
The eagle, we're like, oh, okay, we can
Sure.
find this.
Sure, I'll give you an example, right? So I don't know the name of this particular element, but there's actually something which has two legs, and it actually carries cargo, right? And that's something that we've discovered is actually within the human cell. And you can actually find, if you put in, there's animation videos on this, so obviously we can't see it directly. Now, if you look at human transportation, we've come up with things pretty similar to that, independent of us actually looking into the human cell.
There's a thing in your cells that has two legs.
Yeah, it's like this, it looks like the animation looks like a robot, and it's carrying cargo, and it delivers cargo and it comes back. Now, that particular thing was not observed, and then humans came up with something similar. In fact, humans came up with similar designs before they looked at the cell.
But also you're saying through, was it an animation, like someone has recreated the logic of how that works?
Not the logic of how it works.
How it looks, they animated
how it looks, they animated it.
The problem is that the animator, obviously, in order for you to understand the representation of how it works, the animator has animated.
Yeah, but it's for something
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like that video you've seen, the animation you've seen has gone through someone whose job is visually to animate something.
I see what you're saying. However, what if the animator's representation is an accurate representation of the...
But you see what you're
No,
doing?
but
listen, this is inconsistency. You know what you're doing here? And I'm so sorry. Because what you're doing here is you are trying your absolute best. Look, we're talking about what logic answered there. And all you're doing is you're saying, but what if the animator got it wrong? What if that's not...
He's saying, what if the animator got it right?
What was your name? Alexi, I see that as inconsistency. I see that as double standards. And you know why? Because it's like you go about your day-to-day life, you use rational, logical, even when you're crossing the road. And right. But when it comes to the existence of God, you've put so so many clauses in there. I have to see it written down. Well, you have. That's what you've done.
Talk about this.
Yeah. That's the one.
Is that what we've done now? Is that we talked about the DNA, which and I'm gonna stick to this. You know why? Because
So he's talking about this thing.
Answer if you wish to. You have to answer because you talked about the book information. If there's information, there's an author. I talked about the DNA. I haven't seen anything logical or rational to refute the argument. So DNA is information, and if information, there's building blocks, there's RNA, and there's other elements in there that work like a factory. Can you tell me?
Information is how we interpret how.
No problem. Is it still information?
He's talking about this.
When you have a computer, can we watch it after this? Yeah. So the thing is, we have a computer. They're the zeros and ones. Yeah. We don't know how that works. I don't know what the hell zeros and ones are. But all I know, it helps my computer to function. So I'm asking a simple question: the DNA, if it has these functions in place that gives you a lot of things are made in the you are the DNA blocks. What is your basic logical conclusion? Where that came from?
Wait, sorry, say that again. What is my basic...
What is your logical, rational understanding of what could have given rise to this DNA to work in that way?
So you're asking me what is my understanding of how I think, what the reason for DNA working is. No, but this is the thing is, I'm not the one who's saying that I have an answer to how that DNA works.
Why not?
It's the people who are saying God is the designer.
Forget God for a second.
No, but that's the thing. That's the thing is if somebody said to you, how does this piece of DNA work, right?
How does it work? Why does it work like that?
Why does it work like that? But what does that mean? Why does
very
it work
simple.
like
For
that?
example,
Why do I have to
why did the author write this book? Aira, for example. Yeah, one reason. Aira, you can check it out. Why did this person write this book? I don't know. But what I do know, it was written by someone and there's information. So I'm not asking you why the DNA works like that. I'm asking you the way it's designed. What's your basic conclusion? Give me an answer.
So you're asking me, I just want to clarify to make sure that I'm answering correctly. So you're asking me, why does DNA work?
No, why? I'm asking you, for example, you gave an example of a book. If there's information, it requires an author. Is that correct?
Intelligence.
If there's information, there has to be intelligence.
No, but this is the thing: is that we can't compare the information that is writing, okay, which is a way that humans use to communicate, right? That's information, and then suddenly compare it to DNA and say that it's
why not?
No, not actual letters.
No, it's not actual letters. But what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is, which is more advanced information, this book or the DNA?
The DNA.
Okay. Does this book have an intelligent designer behind it?
This book, no.
Yes, this book. Yeah.
This book, no.
Okay.
Any book.
Does the DNA have intelligent design?
I don't know. No.
Okay. Let me get this right. The book has information.
Yes.
It has an author.
Yes.
It's intelligent.
Yes. And the reason that I agree that it has a designer is because there's certain things in that book that I can see that indicate to me that a human has made it.
You know that humans have occurred from nature, whereas DNA could have occurred from nature just by unconscious physical processes. Just physics to chemistry to biology.
That's nonsense.
Yeah, evolution is nonsense.
I have never
We've heard it.
in my life. Can you imagine a book? Look, check this out. Look at this inconsistency. The book has got limited number of characters in there, and there's information. Author intelligence. Okay.
Yeah,
DNA,
but it's author intelligence because I can see that it's been made by a
no
human.
problem.
Right?
I'm giving you something you can see. Like you said, seeing is believing. Yeah, okay. The DNA is something you can see. Okay, and he himself, look, that's what's got his smoke on his face. Yeah, you can see, you can observe, you can see the functionality. This is something you can see. I'm going to give it to you.
By the book, right?
Not the book. The DNA. The DNA is something you can observe. You can see. You can see how it works.
Okay, But you can't see
DNA?
things in the DNA that show you that there's been a designer.
Okay. So can I give a concrete example to help both of you? A concrete example you can both argue about. So when you get a hard drive, it's there to save information. When you take the human DNA, it can save information in a much more efficient way. So for example, a strip of DNA can be read this way, backwards, and 3D. So therefore, the efficiency is much better. And this is obviously independent. So you two, if you can argue about this point, and we could take it from there.
Wait, so you're saying that the DNA, you're comparing a hard drive and a DNA.
It's more efficient.
Yes,
It works better.
But then firstly, the type of information they store is completely different.
No, but
They're
no
not
problem. Do they store information?
Huh?
Do they store information?
Well, it depends. It's totally two different fields of
No problem. Do they store information?
Well, if you say the DNA is information, then it's both things.
Okay, so if there's information, it requires intelligence.
No.
Okay, so this
But wait. Let's agree on something, right?
Okay.
Even if you don't believe in God, you still, as a materialist, would say natural selection designed it. You would still have that. They would. Exactly. But they would.
where did it come from? Okay,
I would say that it's an object that has certain functions.
Why
and
does
you
it have
could
that
guess.
function?
Sorry.
Why does it have those functions?
Well,
What does that mean? Because of mango?
No, but there isn't. No. But there is. I don't believe that there is a reason to why this thing exists. It just exists.
So
okay?
why don't you
I
use
don't
that?
feel like I have to. I don't have to explain this.
Alex, why don't you do that in your day-to-day life, mate? When you go across the road, why don't you just forget looking left or right?
Well,
just
because
jump straight into the road.
No. Because you're comparing different things. You're comparing nature, which is above everything, that encapsulates kind of, we live inside of that, okay? So if I'm looking at man-made objects or whatever, then it's easy for me to start to analyze it because I have a lot more reference points. When it comes to the intricacies of a tree or of DNA, then it's a lot more complex, right?
But if it's more complex, it supports your argument further.
Yeah.
Okay, you're saying with your own mouth.
That's the point we're trying to make.
Boiling water is less complex, but I know somebody made it, there's design.
Yes.
DNA is more complex. Well, I don't know, it's just an object.
The difference is, like, one object you know
does not,
doesn't
just
occur by natural
complex
processes.
does not automatically mean like design, and it's not like the hallmark of design.
No, but why are you...
Like, you don't get bonus design points for saying that DNA is way more complex than the book, right? Which is to say, like, you got a spearhead, very simple shape, right? That looks like it's designed, right? Find a random amoeba-shaped rock, right? This is like this looks like it, hey man, maybe you think it's design, but it's got way less design in it, even though it's way more complex shape, right? Alexis already said, hey dude, the tree is way more complex than your iPhone.
Then why don't you...
By the way, that example works against you.
Yes.
Because that is the exact point we're making. That, okay, when you see a spear and you see, say, obsidian rock and it has a particular shape, then you're like, okay, but here we're talking about hard drive. And by the way, we fitted your criteria, which is that something that there was independent human design and independent design in nature.
Yes.
So I don't see why the conclusions that we're making are invalid.
But design, the thing is, if we use the word design for nature, that indicates that it's had, that someone for a specific purpose, that its existence is for a specific person.
Yes. Why is that troubling?
Right? But there is, that's because that's how we comprehend things. Everything that we do, we create for a specific purpose, right? So that's why when we start to try and comprehend how, say, a leaf works, we're looking at it from that angle, and so we will automatically look for a designer. But these things are so complicated that they're outside, and in my belief, they're outside our area of comprehension. So whether you go.
But it's outside of your comprehension of logic?
No.
What are you saying bye-bye to logic?
No. Our comprehension is, the way we comprehend things, okay, is based on our life experience. Right?
What about logic and
So, for
rationality?
example,
For
logic,
okay,
right?
so
you have a start and a finish, for example,
Yes,
right?
okay.
A start and a finish. So that's why we always argue who started the universe.
Can I summarize your point?
One more thing. Then design, right? We say the leaf does photosynthesis because we try and find the reason.
Okay,
right?
so
but
look.
in my belief, it's much more above that, in the sense that there are no reasons, but we just can't comprehend that. We are looking.
Okay. So look. In a way, what you're saying is we have a pattern detection system which is in overdrive. That's what you're basically saying, right?
Yeah.
Now, my argument to that is I don't disagree with the fact that it's possible that human beings could be falling prey to a pattern detection system which is in the overdrive and looking for design where there's no design.
Yes.
However, in this case, it's the opposite. We're not starting off by looking at something and having an overdrive in terms of our pattern detection system. We're starting off with what we can both see are independent devices. One biological, one a human artifact. And we're looking at both of them, and with the human artifact, we're seeing functionality, we're seeing complex, intricate parts of working together. The same with the one in nature. Here the inference is design. Here the inference according to you is not design. We're trying to figure out why not.
We're applying our logic of storing information to the DNA.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So we are applying our logic of looking for how things work and how we explain how things work, and then we apply that to the DNA.
But we don't have. By the way,
for us to communicate.
sure. But you do realize that apart from using what we can use in terms of our experiences, that is the way that actually science works. That is the way that actually we function as human beings. We have no alternative to that.
Okay, but this is the thing is where I most disagree with the idea of, okay, well, God did it.
We're not saying, you see, we're not saying God did it. All we're saying is...
What we're saying is, that I'm not saying you have to, but what I'm saying is, why are you so, not afraid, but you just do not anything but a designer. It's like anything, like we've talked about DNA, we've talked about ball, we've talked about phone, but the results are different. We're talking about, I want to say similar things, but how we come to the conclusions of why one material object is designed, and we apply that to something more complex in design, and the conclusions we arrive at are totally different.
Because on this object, for example, or any man-made object, it's not just the fact that the object works that makes me think it's designed, it's other factors.
Now, what other factors?
Well, as I said, the fact that I know that this was made by a human because it's got writing on it, it's got man-made plastic. So as well as this object working as a bottle, right? It's not the thing that makes me think that it's designed. The thing that makes me think that it's no. When I analyze it,
there is no way. Look, if I bet you any money that you would believe this is designed if you never saw any.
We cannot say that because we aren't in that situation.
You can because have you gone to the factory to see this get made?
But we've gone through that.
Have you?
No.
Okay, have you seen the video?
No.
Okay, why do you believe this is designed?
Well, because I can give you a very clear explanation. For example, it has writing on it, right?
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, let me explain.
Okay.
So humans talk language, right? So I see writing, I can read that writing. It's the same writing that I would write a message with to my friends or whatever. So I'm like, okay, there's a piece of information that tells me that it's made by a human. Okay, it's made. Then I see plastic, right? In my life experience, I've never come across plastic in nature in the form that it is here, and I also know in personal experience that plastic is manufactured. Okay, so and then loads of other bits of information.
The shape, maybe?
Well, no, the shape comes along with the plastic, for example, how they mold the bottle. Okay. How they mold the bottle to make it manufacturable and whatnot. Okay. So all these things come together in my brain, which makes me think that it's man-made, which makes me think that it's designed.
This is what you said. You said, even if you never saw any mankind, you said, I will look at the information. So we're talking the absence of a human being, a factory. You automatically did what? You went to observe the item, not where it came from. You said, okay, first thing I'll do is observe the item. Okay, a bottle, plastic, molded, information, writing.
Which means that it's human.
Okay, one second, no. I'm doing exactly the same with the DNA. I'm looking at it. I know I can't see God or the designer. I'm looking at the product that I have, which is the DNA. Okay. Information, pattern, molding, functionality, and I'm seeing design.
Okay, but define information. So when you say I see information in DNA, define information.
Okay, so
what do you mean by that? As in, this is information, right? Because we've written this down.
No, you understand this information because you speak English.
Exactly.
But for example,
define information in the DNA.
You speak.
No, I don't.
Okay. If you see some information, you never saw Chinese people ever before, yeah? What's the language? Mandarin, yeah? Okay. You're going to be looking at it thinking, oh, that's gibberish. But to a Chinese person, that's not gibberish.
Okay.
It means something. The same thing with DNA. The DNA has information. It has functionality. You don't understand it, but just because you understand it does not mean that there is no information or functionality, and therefore a designer.
Yes, but what makes you think that it's designed other than its functionality?
Because you just did the same thing with the bottle.
No, because it's nothing. Because my reasons for this bottle being designed is nothing to do. What's the function of this bottle?
Why did you?
Hang on a second. What's the function of the bottle?
To drink water.
To drink drink water. So the function of the bottle is to store water,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Were any of my reasons for saying that this was designed to had anything to do with the function of it?
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't.
Okay,
Okay.
no, but what
So
was
therefore,
it?
in my logic, so the logic that I'm using to decide whether something's been designed is independent of its function.
No problem. DNA.
Okay. So that's why. Let me explain why I'm not being inconsistent. You've said the DNA has a function, right?
Let's suppose it
It
doesn't
stores
have a
the information. It's got function.
No, I would deduce a designer if it had no function.
So something had no function.
You think everything has a design?
Let's suppose if it had no function. Okay, I would look at, for example, the way it's, for example, it has certain information. Yeah, there's certain things happening which are causing certain effects to happen. So the way your nose looks like that, the way my nose looks like this. Yeah. So I would say I don't need to know the function. What I know is that the information there has causes and effects. So I'm doing the same thing. But
the function of this bottle has causes and effects as well. Whatever.
The function is a
It's
supporting
irrelevant.
argument.
It's irrelevant. No. You're saying that my inconsistencies is that I see something, okay, I say that it's designed, but then when I see nature, I say it's not designed. I'm explaining to you why it's not inconsistent. I'm explaining to you that the reason I say this is designed isn't to do with its function. It's to do with certain factors which clearly tell me that it's been
you're
designed.
observing the item. And we're observing the item.
And the information that I'm observing.
No problem, but I'm doing the same thing. Because there's no human in the picture, we're observing the item. I'm observing the DNA in nature. I'm observing it and I'm coming to a logical, rational conclusion. There has to be a designer. You're doing the same thing with the bottle. Why do you do human being? Why human being? Why human being?
Why is this designed?
Yes, why human being?
Well, I've explained to you.
Yeah. So like this guy, Alexei is like looking at the thing and he's comparing it. He's comparing it to other stuff he's seen and other things which are in the world. Right? When you're looking at DNA, you know the only thing you compare DNA to is other natural stuff.
Well, that's the point, because what you're doing again, it goes back to your argument. Aki wants it.
Can I have one conversation at a time, please?
I'm so sorry. The point is this: just because you can't see God, you are denying Him, and I'm saying that doesn't add up because you're conscious. Can you see your conscious?
Am I conscious?
No, can you see your consciousness?
No. And I never said I have to see God.
No, but that's what you're doing.
I say I need to see evidence.
It's
different,
if you never saw human beings, you would deduce this to a human being. You say letters, information, molded.
No,
but when
sorry,
it comes
you're saying
to
if I've never seen human
yes, that's what was my premise. I said if you saw no human being,
and then I wouldn't know language, so I wouldn't be able to see that this is language.
Okay, but would you see
we've been over this in the sense that, you know, I would see a pattern of different lines. Okay.
So say that again. Say that again.
If I've never seen humans before, right? We can agree that I wouldn't be able to read.
You wouldn't read, okay.
So that's why this would mean nothing to me.
Yes. No. It would be nothing to you based on information.
No, is in terms of that.
You can't read it.
If I had, not only that, like, not only would he not be able to like read it in the sense of understand it, he wouldn't even recognize these squiggles as a language.
No problem. But the point is this: would you not look at that W and be like, why not some other shape? Would you not look at the board and be like, why reject here? Why a blue cap there? Why?
No. He could do it all day and still not come in.
I could, you know, maybe you could look at this and you'd think it has totally different.
What would you do? Look, no human being. You saw the ball.
Right.
You're having a moment with the ball now. Yeah. What's coming to your mind?
You ask whether it could have come about through natural processes or not.
You know, it's completely. If I have no prior information.
No prior information. You're with the ball and you're in a cave. It's silent, and you're looking at it. Tell me what comes to your mind.
I mean, firstly, that it's completely hypothetical.
Hypothetical. Okay. Hypothetical.
Okay, so you're asking me hypothetically if I saw this bottle, what would come to mind? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer.
What do you mean? I don't know. So would you be like?
Okay, so I
don't know. I don't know. Would you be saying I don't know?
I see an object. Okay, maybe I start thinking what I could use it for if I wanted to use it.
Oh, you give it a purpose.
Well, as in a human would, I'm sure, just a survival instinct, you would try and find purpose in something.
Okay,
right?
okay.
So maybe you would see it and you'd look at it, whatever. Okay. You know? But that's irrelevant.
So you never ever think.
We're talking. Yeah, but this is the problem.
Would you ever think where this came from?
It's too much of a hypothetical for us to start.
No, it's not.
It is because none of us are in that situation.
No,
and so we're creating a false kind of reality to start.
No, I'm not. Caves exist. You exist. Bottle exists.
Yeah, but situation.
I'm not saying we're in Mars and there's a blue donkey. I'm giving pros.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same as
exists and Mars exists.
No, it's not. What would come to your mind? Would you think to yourself, what are these things on it?
As I said, it's completely irrelevant as to what we're creating because everybody here, and the ultimate question that we're debating, right, which is the existence of God or not, it all is based on our experiences where we do have information that we can see. So it's too much of a, we could entertain that discussion.
We have to entertain. Please, give me 1 minute and please tell me, when you look at this bottle, yeah, and you see, yeah, you look at this and you see these patterns. You don't know the information. You see these widgets here. You see these cups. What would you think to yourself where this came from? Did you ever think that?
I probably wouldn't think about where this came from.
So all I'm saying is the fact that you would innately think where this came from is the innate disposition that you have.
No. I said I probably wouldn't think about. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
No.
So you just look at this and be like,
I mean, what's the difference? What's the difference between this and that? No problem. And then that
By the way, do you know if everybody had that attitude, there'd be no science.
Yes.
You'd have no mathematics. You wouldn't have these things. So when you start with that kind of understanding, that okay, I am going to be agnostic.
All of this is based on a completely hypothetical thing. So this doesn't help your argument because it's based.
But it does. It does.
To make your point,
it
you
does.
have to be like,
You know
well,
why?
if
You know why?
No. But I'll explain to you why. Because the whole premise of philosophy is that you can do thought experiments.
Yes.
You can say if this, therefore that. You can have counterfactuals.
Yes.
So that's all we're doing. We're going through a process that we go through in everyday life anyway.
Yeah, but all you're doing is, let me tell you, I know from your day-to-day life you're a logical, rational man that comes to basic conclusions. You go to your house and see a plate smashed on the floor. There is no way in hell you're going to say, a blue donkey flew through my house and the plate smashed on the floor. Earthquake, the cat.
I'm not sure. I'm going to go pray.
That when it comes to God and His existence, you would go to the most absurd thinking process, logic, rationality.
No, because why would it have to be God? For example, why isn't it something completely different that created the tree? It could be.
Why everything but not God?
No. It's not about why everything is not God. It's about that I stand in the position where, I see an object, whatever, okay, so, I see a tree, and then somebody is coming and making a claim that it is God. And I'm not seeing any reason for why it's God and not something completely different.
Okay, wait, hang on. Wait, sorry, 1 second. You said something completely different. I have no problem with...
Maybe,
No, look, I don't have a problem with you saying it doesn't make sense that it's God, and it could be something different, but in this case, you're saying I can't take it any further.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Sorry, which case you
The case of the bottle, you said, well, I'm not sure, but I'm not making a conclusion here.
Well, I don't like the bottle example because it's too hypothetical. It's too.
You're saying that's your whole brain basically, and then you wake up in a.
Yeah, you're saying that I wired my whole brain.
Okay.
For me, that's not.
Don't mention. No, he's saying forget God. You don't have to say it's God. Give us another rational explanation to the bottle.
Sorry, say again.
Give another explanation, a rational explanation to the bottle. Put God to a side. Give us another rational explanation to the God. I'm not saying you have to.
To the what? Sorry,
to the bottle. Yeah.
Right.
In the case. Forget God. Okay. What other explanations?
What are we talking about? We're talking about a bottle, and I'm trying to give it a.
You don't need to say its design is God. Give me another explanation.
What does that mean? An explanation.
Is it nature? Is it evolution?
I mean, again, it's impossible for me to comprehend how I would think because I'm not in that situation. The simple fact of the matter is, I know that you're asking me, why do you think this bottle's designed and the tree isn't designed? Well, I'm not. My brain isn't white. I'm told you why I think this bottle is designed and why that isn't designed because of certain things on that bottle, because of my experience of things I know.
But you contradicting
So I'm not contradicting myself because there are different. This bottle has information that
the
tree
DNA has
doesn't.
information. Yes, it does.
No.
Yes, it does.
That tree does not have
It has
writing.
DNA.
That tree does not have writing on it, okay? And writing not as information.
DNA is more complex than this information on this.
Yes,
this is
it doesn't matter.
This is like a little minute thing.
Of course.
If you compare it to DNA.
Of course.
But you say DNA, no design, but the bottle.
No. Because this has writing on it, okay?
But the DNA has
Let me explain.
information in it.
it's not the fact that this is information in the sense of just like an objective piece of information. It's a fact that it's a piece of information that I can attribute to humans, okay? And it has other elements which I can attribute to humans.
Then why don't you attribute the DNA to a designer?
Sorry?
Why don't you attribute the DNA and its function to a designer?
But what bit of information do I see in the DNA?
There's so much information. Come on, are you for real? Man, you know as well. There is so much information in the DNA.
No, of course.
So then how do you not equate to a DNA? Let's wrap up. But why do you not equate that to a designer?
No, because there isn't things that I see in the concept of DNA that makes me think
If
that
you
it's been...
study DNA, you'll be mind blown. And if you'll be mind blown, if I told you that DNA is a very, very complex
I know
machine.
that it's very complex.
But if you know that, then why are you not ascribing it to a designer?
Because there isn't factors there that I'm looking
There is,
at.
we just said the functionality.
So don't you surely, like, you believe in evolution basically, right?
See, he's trying to go to evolution,
Okay.
really.
So like, if there's, you're always, when you see something, you're trying to work out whether it's designed. You're trying to rule out whether or not it could have come about by an unconscious natural process. And so like this, like the plastic, because of its chemical properties, you know that plastic doesn't just emerge in nature. Same with like silicon in a phone.
Where does it come from? Let me ask you, where do you think the bottle came from?
So the bottle, we know that it must
the DNA, sorry.
So the DNA could have come about from an unconscious process like evolution, preceded by abiogenesis. Yeah, and so basically, you know, you have chemicals, and the chemicals react with each other, and eventually you get a chemical that can self-replicate. Okay. And then once you have a self-replicator, then it can vary a little bit, it can mutate, and then at that point you basically have the conditions necessary for evolution to occur.
So you believe that that's a possibility to come from there?
So yeah, that's
Okay, so let me get this right. So, and this is where I'm seeing where you have
abiogenesis plus evolution.
You have at least said that might be, and even though it sounds to me it's absurd, yeah, because you're saying disorder brings about order, unconscious things, random things bring about order, and that is absolutely nonsense. Because if something,
some examples that aren't evolution,
no, you can't.
It happens in geological examples as well.
No, the question is this: where did? No.
Yeah, you find evolution occurring in cyclic processes.
Evolution has got nothing to do with it. Let me tell you why. If the properties to make a chocolate cheesecake is not in this bottle, it is irrelevant how much time, how much evolution you give it, because the properties to make that is not in the bottle. So when you come and say, what was it? Disorder. The disorder will bring about order. How could something that doesn't have, if we're conscious beings, how could we be given rise to consciousness when the very material itself doesn't have consciousness? It's crazy. But anyways, it was nice talking.
It's cognitive science for the answers to that question.
James, thank you very much as well. But sorry,
I don't think these guys deserve to go to hell now because they aren't recognizing Tawheed.
I never said that, because Islam is the only religion that believes that if the message of Islam hasn't reached the person, he doesn't go hell.
What about atheists?
Not even atheists, Christianity, Hindus, anyone that didn't receive the message of Islam, God is the most just and merciful. He's not going to throw people in hellfire. You're going to hear the message. Thank you very much, Alexis. Thank you. Sorry if I got a bit passionate.
No, dude, it's good. We're like that too.
Thank you. Okay, so guys, we had a nice discussion here. Obviously, we had to do a bit of, sticking on some people. But yeah, that's it. We're just having a nice conversation. And hope you benefited. Don't forget to subscribe to Dawah Wise, inshallah, and share this video with your friends and family. Goodbye. Where's Muslim?
Happened to you. I took mine. Look, mine is there. No, this one is yours. Okay, brother, Jazak Allah Khair, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you. Thank you very much. And please comment, subscribe. And please. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Those things need to change.